And welcome. Thank you. I'm going to call to order the Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, January 21st, 2026. I'm Jeff Baker, Arapahoe County Commissioner and Chair of DRCOG. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And we're going to have a roll call, and then I'll be introducing new members and alternates. Ms. Stevens, would you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know we have quite a few new members and alternates, so just so everyone's aware, the way that roll is done is I will announce the member first, and if the member is not here, then I'll be announcing the alternate. So thank you so much, and here we go. Julie Duran-Mullica, Adams County. Kathy Henson, Adams County. Here. Jeff Baker, Arapahoe County.
Here.
Claire Levy, Boulder County. Here. Excuse me, Austin Ward, Sitting County, Broomfield.
Here.
Rebecca Lloyd, Clear Creek County. Adam Paul, Sitting County of Denver. Kevin Flynn, Denver. Here. Kevin Van Winkle, Douglas County. Abe Layden, Douglas County. Susan Berriman, Gilpin County. Here. Andy Kerr, Jefferson County. Excuse me, Rachel Zenzinger, Jefferson County. Here. Sharon Davis, Arvada. Allison Coombs, Aurora. Rob Andrews, Aurora. Larry Vittum, Bennett. Royce Pindell, Bennett.
Here.
David Spellman, Blackhawk. Nicole Spear, Boulder. Greg Mills, Brighton.
Here.
Deborah Mulvey, Castle Pines. Roger Hudson, Castle Pines. Jason Gray, Castle Rock. Tim Dietz, Castle Rock. Christine Sweetland, Centennial. Here. Zane Plasek, Central City. Robert Eber, Cherry Hills Village. Susan McGuire, Cherry Hills Village. Charles Dukes, Commerce City. Here. Michelle Rogers, Dacono. Adam Moorhead, Dacono. Steve Conklin, Edgewater.
Good evening.
Jack Bethel, Inglewood. Emily Bayer, Erie. Linda Montoya, Federal Heights. Ray Bird, Firestone. Don Cognac, Firestone. Josie Cockrell, Foxfield. Lisa Jones, Foxfield. Wendy Padilla, Frederick. Georgia Kofed, Georgetown. Here. Rachel Binkley, Glendale. Ryan Teixeira, Glendale. Gerhard Pfau, Golden. Here. George Lance, Greenwood Village. Chuck Harmon, Idaho Springs. Here. David Friedland, Lafayette. Jeslyn Sherzai, Lakewood. Here. Excuse me. Robert Reichard, Littleton.
Here.
Kat Bristow, Lockbuoy.
Here.
I believe Kat. There we go. Thank you so much. Marissa Harmon, Lone Tree. Alicia Brown, Lone Tree. Matthew Popkin, Longmont. Susie Hidalgo Faring, Longmont. Judy Kern, Louisville. Present. Holly Rogan, Lyons. Mark Browning, Lyons. Colleen Whitlow, Meade. Here. Angela Bernhardt, Morrison. Here. Kathleen Bailey, Mountain View.
Here.
Nicole Sterling, Netherland. Richard Kondo, North Glen.
Here.
All right. John Dyack, Parker. Here. Jay Whitaker, Sheridan. Here. Lee Bernardo, Silver Plume. Neil Shaw, Superior. Here. Justin Martinez, Thornton. Here. Sarah Nermella, Westminster. Rachel Hulteen, Wheat Ridge. Darius Pakba, CDOT. Here. Sally Chafee, CDOT. Bill Soroy, RTD.
Here.
All right, and with that, Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I want to recognize some new members and new alternates were recognized last month, but we also, or earlier this month, I should say, December 7th meeting. But I did want to at least acknowledge some that are here for the first time as well. So Matthew Popkin, City of Longmont. Jay Whitaker, City of Sheridan. Jack Bethel from the City of Englewood is here. And Gerhard Pfau from City of Golden. Mayor Christine Sweetland from Centennial. And did Rob Andrews come in? I just wanted from City of Aurora. New alternates, Susie Hidalgo Faring from City of Longmont. If you're here, you can raise your hand or stand up if you're in the back. Sally Daigle, City of Sheridan is here, back. And Craig Kim, City of Commerce City, he's here. Thank you very much. Orthaniel Sierra, the City of Englewood, formerly the member, is now an alternate. Emily Kurzinski, City of Golden, is an alternate. And Tadeo and City of Brighton. Is there anybody that I may have neglected? You can just raise your hand and I'll have you introduce yourself. I'm not seeing any, so thank you very much. We appreciate that. We're going to move to approve the agenda. If there's any corrections or anybody wants to change anything, I'm not seeing any hands. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you.
Second.
And we have multiple seconds, so there's a motion and a second. Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion about the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. The motion carries and the agenda has been approved. Our first item on the agenda tonight is a strategic informational briefing from RTD Accountability Committee update. Jacob Rieger, the Director of Transportation Planning and Operations, will make the introductions here. This is item number 5 on your agenda and attachment A in your packet. Jacob, good evening.
Thank you, Chair Baker. Good evening, everyone. So Senate Bill 161 established this RTD Accountability Committee, and it actually builds off work from a previous accountability committee that DRCOG managed back in 2021. This current committee has been meeting over the past fall, over the winter, per the legislation, and we have been monitoring closely the activities of this RTD Accountability Committee. And we thought it would be important for you to hear directly from the folks, what's been happening with the committee. Oh, all right. We thought it'd be important for you all to hear directly what's been happening with the RTD Accountability Committee. It's been really important work. So I'd like to introduce Kelly Blinn, who is Senior Policy Advisor with the Colorado Energy Office, and Jamie Lewis, I believe you were the Vice Chair of the Accountability Committee, to come and talk to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all so much for having us here tonight. I'm Kelly Blinn. I'm with the Colorado Energy Office. I was a committee administrator for the RTD Accountability Committee, and I'm here tonight with the co-chair of the committee, Jamie Lewis, to give you an update on our process and where we're at in concluding our work at this point, and give you an overview of some of the recommendations. Sorry, technical difficulty. Great, so just to give an overview of the committee's charge and kind of requirements, SB 25-161, legislation that was signed into law last year, established the committee within the Colorado Energy Office with 14 voting members and 1 ex officio member appointed by the governor, legislature, and RTD. The legislation tasked the committee with making recommendations on several different topics related to primarily governance, paratransit, and workforce retention, and to then report back to the governor and legislature by January 30th, 2026, so next week, coming up on us. And that report is supposed to contain any findings of its evaluation and recommendations. The legislation also encouraged the committee to build on the previous work that Jacob mentioned that DRCOG led in 2020 and 2021 with the previous accountability committee. So that was also a part of our work. This is just some of the statutory language outlining the specific issues that the committee was meant to cover within governance, the structure of the board of directors and executive leadership, their compensation, as well as representation of local governments and state agencies within the district. We ended up kind of spinning that topic out onto its own, but thought that will be interesting to you all here tonight. Also focused on paratransit services within the district's area, as well as a few different workforce and labor-related topics. So this is just an overview of the committee's composition and members. This is the list of the members who are appointed, 6 by the governor, 1 ex officio member appointed by RTD from their board, and 8 voting members appointed by the legislature. And the members all had sort of specific areas of expertise or representation prescribed in the legislation to try to have a balanced set of perspectives, including board members, environmental advocates, local governments, transit riders with disabilities, youth transit riders, et cetera. In terms of the team that supported the committee, as I mentioned, I was the committee administrator and worked to hire a facilitator, Barrick Abramson with Confluence Policy and Strategy Group, as well as some research support. David Bragdon is a national expert in transit agency governance. He led Transit Center, which is a foundation working on public transit previously, and he was working with Nelson Nygaard and Eno Center for Transportation, 2 national groups who helped do some independent research on paratransit and workforce. And we felt like that was important to provide the committee with a shared base of information to inform their deliberations. In terms of stakeholder input, we did not have time on our side. The committee was seated the first week of August. We started meeting at the end of August and had to be wrapping up our report in early January to be able to submit to the legislature. So we did kind of as much stakeholder work as we could. In particular, the committee itself, like I mentioned, did have a number of different interests and backgrounds that kind of brought different stakeholder perspectives to the table. We took public written comments throughout the fall, as well as had public comment at each meeting. And also our research supports did interviews with perhaps some of you, but with different stakeholders around the region to help inform the conversation. In terms of our process, this is sort of the funnel idea of we started out with our first several meetings doing a lot of learning and hearing from the research team, from RTD and other experts, hearing public comment. Then the committee really moved into idea generation, everything on the table in terms of recommendations they wanted to consider, then worked through prioritizing which ideas really had merit, and finally went through a process of voting on the recommendations they wanted to put forward to the legislature. The committee's bylaws required a simple majority to be able to move forward any recommendations. Overall, we had 12 public meetings, over 40 hours of meeting time over 4 months, and wound up with about 30 recommendations that we're putting forward to the legislature and governor next week. I will pass it over to Jamie in a moment. I did just want to say we spent a lot of time with the committee kind of defining what the problem statement was, and in particular focusing on the governance issue. Ultimately, the 2020 and 2021 committee process did not end up making recommendations on governance and said a future effort should look at that in more detail. And so the committee felt like that was an important area for them to focus. And based on their experience and some of the interviews done, the public comments that they heard, really concluded that while governance reform may not be the one and only thing that is needed to ensure successful transit service for the region, they felt like it was a really important area to look at and make changes. So some of the top sort of system level problems that were really driving their conversations was, concerns about low ridership and factors contributing to it, concerns about public trust and confidence, and concerns about having a strategic vision and plan for transit in the region. Specifically related to governance, they identified several issues that they wanted to address, particularly around seeing a need for more expertise and capacity on the board, challenges with having a particularly large board and being able to coordinate and align to provide some of that strategic leadership that's needed in some of these challenging moments. And finally, just some of the lack of attention and competition for some of the elected board seats that's made it challenging to work together over time. So just wanted to highlight that, and I think with that, I will pass it over to Jamie. We won't read every 31 recommendations to you, but wanted to highlight some of the key ones that we'll be putting forward.
Thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate that. If you don't know me, I'm Jamie Lewis. I am the Transit Advisor for the Colorado Cross Disability Coalition. I'm also a former RTD board member. I want to thank Kelly and her staff for basically we did about 1 year's worth of work in about 4 months. So I'm pretty impressed. I was impressed with the people we work with, especially the facilitator, Barrick Abramson and Carrie Steele from Confluence Policy and Strategy. I think the board was very well represented, both rural, urban, and basically the whole district was represented. 15 people. Now, I know we can't compete with the numbers we have here tonight, but getting 15 people to agree on something obviously is very difficult. I think we all came in with our own perceptions on what was the problems, what were the problems, I should say, or what we thought the solutions were. And within, I would say 2 months, I think we all kind of let all those thoughts escape us and to look at the facts and look at the research. And I think we've come up with some recommendations that both the state and RTD can live with. I think the biggest takeaway I took away is that RTD is already doing maybe about 70% of some of the recommendations we're going to be giving them, but we just feel like there needs to be more funding and more of a sense of expediency, for example, transit-orientated development. The board also needs to emphasize on vision and creative ways of creating new revenue for the future. So as Kelly says, I'm briefly going to go through some of the recommendations, but not in super detail. But if you'd like to reach out to us later, we don't want to take everything away from the governor, who's getting a full copy by the 30th of the month. So we don't want to give too much away. But one of the things we discovered is that the board is quite large compared to other transit boards around the country. And we just felt like a smaller board, a more nimble board would be more efficient. So we will be recommending a smaller board for RTD. Having said that, I think we're expecting more results from a smaller board. So therefore, we are also looking at compensation. We feel like we can recruit better candidates for the RTD board if they're compensated properly. Another recommendation that we were asked to look into is the paratransit system. As you know, we have the basic paratransit system, which is called Access-a-Ride, and a new system called Access on Demand. And it's caused quite a excitement in our community because for the first time, people like myself can request on-demand service through Uber, Lyft, Zip, and I can't remember the fourth one, but it has really changed the lives of many people using Access on Demand. Unfortunately, starting that project only 5 years ago, the expense of that project has grown exponentially. So we're looking at an operational analysis to see how we can balance those two systems out. The first system being mandated by the federal government and the second one being optional. We also looked at workforce recommendations. I do want to say that when we did our research, RTD is not the only transit agency that has issues. Most of the transit agencies across the country are having similar issues. And one of the biggest ones is workforce, is getting and retaining good bus drivers and train operators. We seem to get a good recruitment, but have a hard time hanging on to them because the job is tough. I know last year they raised the minimum wage for a bus driver, and we seem to be on the right track, but we still need to fill that gap because there are still being trips canceled and delays in service because of lack of operators. And the last one we want to talk about, and this will probably interest you the most, is the local government and state agency collaboration. We felt that the sub-regional service councils are not quite working the way we thought they would. There needs to be more of a clear delineation on the expectations of what RTD can provide, working with local communities to find out what their long-range transportation plans are, and to see if we can fit those plans into RTD by getting extra funding and looking to the future to ensure the whole district has adequate transportation. Sometimes I think we have it backwards. I think we need to have those little connectors to make sure people can get to a bus stop before we start building out larger pieces of RTD. But we really want to cooperate and have a communication. And I think that's the key final statement that I'm going to make, that I really think the communication between the state, our local partners, you, and RTD can be strengthened. And I think we have a great future ahead. And I think it's our obligation to make sure that we have the greatest transportation available to our communities. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. I will just conclude that we are in the process of finalizing the final report. Like I mentioned, it'll be published on or before January 30th. We'll be doing a briefing with the legislature on February 4th. And that report will include all our meeting materials if you're interested, all the public comments, et cetera. And all of that is on the Energy Office website, which is at the bottom of this page. And I don't know if there's time for questions or if we want to do that, but happy to take some.
We do have time for questions, so I will open it up. I saw Director Martinez.
Thank you for the presentation, and I really appreciate all the work that the committee has done for such a short amount of time. I do have one question about the recommendation to establish a 9-member board with 5 elected and 4 members appointed by the governor. And I was just hoping you could provide a little bit of insight into the committee's reasoning for recommending allocating 4 members of the RTD board to be appointed by the governor, because I can see some of the advantages of reducing the board size to 9, but I'm struggling to understand why so many board members would not be directly accountable to the community around them.
After studying other cities like Utah, Kansas City, again, we realized that the larger the board, the more difficult it was to communicate. Having elected 5 and appointed 4 still respects the electorate. There was a strong pushback about making it a totally appointed board, which was one of the recommendations early in our discussions. We felt we needed to respect the electorate, so there will be a heavy lift for the legislature to have to sell, the not rezoning, but redistricting. So we have 5 voted in members. The 4 expertise, we felt we needed more expertise on the board, specifically finance, transit-orientated development, and planning. And we just felt like we weren't looking at the last 20 years, we weren't getting a lot of candidates with those specific skills. So that's why we kind of made it a hybrid, again, respecting the electorate, but also trying to get a higher skill level of directors on board. Also want to mention that the governor does approve, but it's at the list that will be given to him, and it also has to be approved by the legislature.
Director Levy and then Director Baer.
Thanks for the presentation and the report and your work on the committee. I'm sure trying to do all this work in such a short period of time was challenging. I was kind of curious about the recommendation, local government recommendation number 1 on improving sub-regional service councils, and what caught my eye is that this is really directed primarily or exclusively to RTD. And the creation of these sub-regional councils was a recommendation that came out of the Accountability Committee round 1. And some of us feel that RTD really never did embrace and implement them as they were originally conceived. And I think there's a lot of potential for them. So I guess I wondered whether you discussed at all the need for some legislation that would have created a stronger direction to RTD to actually make these workable and integrated into the transit system.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think because they already are up and running, it was more of a recommendation to kind of do a review and look at what's working and what's not, and kind of coordinate with DRCOG, with local governments on that. I think we heard some of the things that there was, some feeling that they were, not quite living up to that original vision that we tried to include in the recommendation language. I think nothing's necessarily preventing it from being put into legislation, but we didn't necessarily see something like changing the board structure obviously needs to happen that way. This doesn't necessarily need to happen legislatively, but it could.
And one of the ideas to, improve the sub-regional councils is possibly having a third-party facilitator. So it's not a one-way conversation. The feedback we were getting is RTD was kind of presenting to you mode all the time. And there wasn't a balanced conversation about what the needs were in a particular area. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, or if it's true or false. That's the feedback we were getting. So I think one of the possible recommendations is to have a third-party facilitator for the meetings.
I mean, I appreciate the challenge that you all had. I think they exist on paper and really not in reality. And I don't think facilitation is the thing that will make them more effective. I think it would be actually having RTD embrace the concept and realize the potential that they offer. And so I respect the direction you went, and maybe this is just a different conversation that needs to be had. Thanks.
Director Baer.
So much. So I had a question about the access on demand service. I know that they were RTD was looking at that service during your process probably, and realized that it's meeting such an incredible need in the community, and is so successful that they needed to reassess it and charge more for it. And then knowing that the accessibility community's motto is nothing about us without us, I'm just curious if you can walk us through what the outreach process and what your recommendations for sort of looking at that service and improving it, what that looks like.
Some of the recommendations include reaching out a little more. I think there was a misconception that there was not a great amount of outreach during the AOD conversations, and I'm going to push back a little bit on that because I was at every meeting. We discussed that issue for more than 14 months, surveyed, had public meetings. So I think there was some people that kind of came in at the 12th hour and didn't realize most of the work that had been done to that point. But we do encourage RT to ensure that they include the disability community in all communications. And this will be a work effort that's going to need community input. So we will encourage RTD to reach out to the community.
Yeah, our work was overlapping with the board's decision-making process. And I think ultimately, as Jamie mentioned, since they had just gone through 14 months of engagement, I think the committee didn't feel like wanting to wade in to kind of reopen that conversation since it had just been, a decision had just been made. I think the perspective I heard from the committee and especially from Jamie, I think was time to look forward and, you know, both the research support that we had and RTD just went through a peer review with APTA kind of pointed to the need for a more holistic vision for paratransit services, that there isn't kind of an overarching framework. And when they're having to make one-off decisions about one aspect of a particular service, it's kind of hard to gauge, is this the right decision? Is something else? Because there isn't that kind of overall framework of how the district's serving riders with disabilities. So we're hopeful that I think this more comprehensive process and creating that vision will be helpful going forward.
Oh, may I have a follow-up? What's the communication with communities? How can we connect our disability community to the process as as the research or outreach is happening?
That would be run by Gabe Christie, who's the ADA coordinator for RTD. I know he's been doing an effort to reach out to multiple groups and to try to get more involvement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Hultin.
Thank you. I just first want to recognize just the tremendous amount of work you guys got done in a small time. I was actually following this process and getting the weekly emails, and it was, you know, I was like, whoa, buckle up in August, knowing your deadline. So, and then seeing the list of people who participated, it was just an extraordinary high caliber representative group of people. So I really have a lot of faith and confidence in the discussions and collaboration that happened there. Looking at the local government stuff, something that wasn't really highlighted in your presentation, but is in the recommendations around planning for the future. The last recommendation here says undergo a process with state, regional, and local partners to plan for a path forward that identifies opportunities, including and beyond fast tracks, establishes a vision for sustainable, efficient, and future-focused transit system, and increases investment in transit, and is inclusive of local governments and DRCOG. And I'm just curious if you could maybe share a little bit where that piece fits into structure of the recommendations that are coming out of here. And do you see that as something that comes after governance reform might come out of the legislature? Or do you feel like that piece is really important at the front end to help inform some of those structural pieces?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm glad you highlighted it. We were trying to run through quickly, but I do think that was an important part of our conversation. It was not necessarily specifically a part of our charge, but came up a lot in conversation, especially around the interactions with local governments and other partners, is just the kind of lingering frustrations with fast tracks and the uncompleted parts of it. And I think through discussions, I think the committee landed on, well, you know, we can't solve this today as this committee. That's very short term, but it does really feel like there's a need to move forward and sort of pass the current stalemate and have a broader conversation about what are we going to do, what should the regional vision for transit be going forward that's either inclusive of those corridors or, you know, more expansive. I think just that conversation needs to be had. And I think the committee kind of pointed to who should be involved. I think how it happens and when is a little bit TBD, but maybe alongside and or following governance reform. Jamie, I don't know if you have anything you'd want to add to that.
Yeah, you know, the fast tracks is such an interesting subject because, you know, if you were to subtract that, there's so many other things that RTD has to look forward to. The growth in population in the state, aging population. So there's so many other issues that really the state, RTD, and your communities really we have to get to the table and talk about these issues because they're coming. And we all know there's a shortage of money. So we're going to have to prioritize, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, thank you for that. And I just think it's really important that, you know, a lot of times we get these structures and in infrastructure systems, both like in governance as well as for physical system that are just built on top of old things that were meaningful and relevant. And it's just really important. We have a modernizing society, a changing demographic, like different resource priorities and needs and accessibility. So I think, an opportunity to really cast a more unified vision around where we want to be going is really helpful as we look at some of these like strategic. So just thank you again for all of your work on this.
Director Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you talk a little bit about something? I'm going to build on Director Martinez's first comments about these 5 elected positions. Just some quick math that's probably wrong, but I imagine that the 5 districts would probably be the size of maybe 4 or 5 state Senate districts. So very, very difficult to campaign in that kind of an environment. So what was the discussion about how to draw the boundaries? There are 58 member governments here. I don't know how many of them are in the RTD district, but 5 seats divided among 30, 40 RTD local governments is going to be a heavy lift. So how was there discussion on how to draw these district boundaries and what the population of each one is? And then finally, was there any discussion about changing any of the RTD boundaries? Are there areas where we have now but should not be in, areas that are not in that we should try to include? Thank you.
I think the boundaries should be based on data, not like I like this area or I don't like that area. I think that was a part that RTD needs to improve on and communicate better, because we do base expansion based on population density. Did you want to cover the first part? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the committee decided not to make recommendations on how to draw boundaries, just knowing there's kind of so many legal considerations that go into that. So there was discussion, and I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, they will be fairly big districts for sure. I think we were kind of looking at some of the different other elected positions in the state, like some of the county commissioners that are elected at large, et cetera. I think might be more comparable to some of them, which, yeah, is a more significant campaigning effort for sure.
We did try to address it, but we ran out of time.
In terms of the boundary, the recommendation about the future conversation of the district does make reference to that, of having that conversation of what the boundary should be. Should there be, different operators providing different types of services, that kind of thing. So kind of a future thing.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. We thank you for your presentation this evening. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on to item number 6. This is report of the chair. I have 2 things I'd like to report on before we get to our committees. First of all, I want to call your attention to Abby in the back, officer from RTD. This is a long time coming. Ever since we left the other building, for those of you that remember when we met at the other building, we've been talking about security and the need for security for this meeting. We have actually 59 member governments and elected officials and high-ranking members of RTD and CDOT that come to this meeting, and security was always a big part of the executive committee's discussion. We had tasked Executive Director Rex and his staff to make that something. I can't tell you how many iterations of contracts and fees and things that Melinda worked through. So I am actually going to ask for a round of applause for Melinda, first of all. And for the executive committee over the last few years, you guys, everybody has been, everyone has been task-driven on this, and we finally got it achieved. And last, I would like a round of applause for Abby. She will be our main officer, but when she cannot make it, there's a backup. And so we take security of our elected officials very seriously. During this period of 2 years when we've been discussing it, we've had individual board members that have had threats made against them, maybe not because of DRCOG, but in their home jurisdictions. So I want everyone to acknowledge how important it is that Abby is here this evening. Thank you. And secondly, one of the returning members from previous being a member of the board from the city of Sheridan, Sally Daigle, is here. Can I have you come up, please, Sally, real quick? No.
That's so awesome. Yay. Oh.
We're going to get a photographer up here.
I'll get.
Numbers coming.
Oh yeah, we got to get out of the light.
That's right.
Very cool.
This is
going. There you go. Good? Wow, all right.
all right. Yay. The famous block of wood that we award directors at their 5-year anniversary. Sally was here for longer than that. But, yeah.
Nice.
This is hard to come by. This is Colorado wood, and it has Mount Blue Sky at 14,200 feet.
It's beetle kill.
Sorry?
Beetle kill wood.
Beetle kill wood, and it says Sally Daigle honoring 5 years of service, but we know we are. All right, and next we will ask for a report from Performance and Engagement Committee Director Kondo, who is virtual today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This evening, prior to the regular board meeting, the P&E Engagement Committee had met to receive a briefing on what we believe to be, at least in recent DRCOG history, to be the first ever peer exchange program that will take place in May with the Puget Sound Regional Council of Governments. And during that time, Executive Director Rex briefed that we are contemplating a 3-day trip that would start on Wednesday, May 6th, and go through Friday, May 8th. So I would ask that those members, as well as alternates, pencil that into your calendar. We are anticipating initially 30 members going, and more information will be coming out shortly. But again, this is something that was inspired when the Sacramento Council of Governments came out to visit 2 years ago. And I'm glad to report that we are going to do a walkabout, so to speak, and stretch our legs and see how other regions do their thing. So that's all that I have to report. And I turn the mic back over to the chair.
Thank you, Director Kondo. Report of the Finance and Budget Committee, Director Sherazai.
Yes, thank you. I would encourage folks for the upcoming board work session. We're going to be getting an update from Power Ahead project that we've been working on. There have been a number of grants that we've been improving in the Budget and Finance Committee, one of which was a contract to conduct analysis of building stock and provide recs for targeted decarbonization, and additionally a contract with Lutheran Family Services to deliver HVAC and heat pump trainings for decarbonization efforts. So we'll get much more information. There's been a tremendous amount of work, but the Budget and Finance Committee has been approving a number of grants regarding that. And then one final thing, I don't believe I had a chance to update the group in December on this, but we did make a decision to increase the amount that a contract needs to come in front of the body from $75,000, which is very low, if you have an idea of how big the contracts typically are, to $250,000, just to be responsive to the level of output we're doing in the community. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Shirazai. Up next is item number 7, report of Executive Director Rex.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and happy 2026 to everybody. It's great seeing you, the new faces here. I want to thank you so much for your willingness to serve on the DRCOG board. To the returning folks, thank you for your commitment to the collaborative. And then we have the lifers as well. We got right, and y'all know who you are. John Dyack, Colleen Whitlow, Kevin Flynn, Steve Conklin, those folks. No, we thank you all so very much. It's so wonderful to see you all again. It's been a while. We haven't met in person since October, so it's good to see you. Couple updates from me tonight. First, I want to give you a little quick update on DOA. We had planned on giving this update in December, but of course we canceled our meeting. As you are aware, DRCOG went through the process with Department of Local Affairs to allow local governments to officially participate in the Regional Housing Needs Assessment to fulfill the requirements of conducting a local housing needs assessment per Sustainable Affordable Housing Assistance Act, and that was passed in 2024. 36 member jurisdictions reviewed the regional housing assessment. During this period, we are excited to share that DOLA sent over official communication to DRCOG in December that the review period met the state requirements, and all 36 local governments have met the requirement for the housing needs assessment. These local governments should have received a letter directly from DOLA sharing this update, which is wonderful news for sure. Also, wanted to call attention to an update that related to the executive order that was written related to compliance-based grant prioritizations. So it's related to the housing needs assessment that if if you're in compliance with the law that you are eligible for grants related to the state. Now we can have a conversation about how we feel about that executive order, but that's probably for another day. So just to let you know, so initially DOLA had determined that DRCOG and local governments who participated were not in compliance. The letters that they sent out were in error. They since corrected that. So if you participated in their regional housing assessment, then they have updated that letter, and you should be receiving this soon, basically saying that you're in compliance. So you're eligible for those grant prioritization. So we wanted to share that with you just in case you haven't heard that yet. Also, I just want to give you here it is, the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program. If you don't know what that is, you will. There's going to be a long process of 2 years, and I know y'all can't wait for that. But basically, so we're going to talk about our regional transportation plan tonight, which is our long-range plan for transportation. We have a short-range plan, which is kind of similar to like your CIP, right? It's a short-range plan. It's real money that ultimately is allocated out as monies that DRCOG receives from federal and state sources, and we allocate that out to our members for projects, right? So it's a big deal. It was about $500 million last time, so it's not chump change for sure. And we're very proud of the process that we run. So we're going to kick that off again. So the next TIP will be from 2029 through 2032. And so there's a little bit of a history there, but we won't get into that tonight. But basically, we're initiating the process right now. So the TAC next week, the Transportation Advisory Committee, which is made up of technical staff from your communities, will be kicking this off next week. And the first thing that we're talking about is going through the TIP policy. We're suggesting the formation of a subcommittee to help focus some of the policy initiatives that ultimately you will decide on. So stay tuned with all that. But I know some of you lifers know all about the TIP, and I know you're excited to get that going again. Advanced BRT implementation study. DRCOG we're also kicking off this Advancing BRT, Bus Rapid Transit Implementation Study, which is funded by $1 million grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation Build America Bureau. The study being led by DRCOG in conjunction with the Regional BRT Partnership will last approximately 18 months and develop innovative funding, financing, and other strategies to continue moving forward the BRT projects and network included in the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. So stay tuned for that. Winter Bike to Work Day is on Friday the 13th, February, Friday the 13th. Obviously this is a much smaller event than our summertime program, but if you have information at your place tonight related to the event, if you could help in any way possible to market this event a little bit, share with your PIOs would be wonderful too. It's really a great opportunity to express to folks that, bicycle commuting can be done at any time of year, even in the great state of Colorado, especially now. It seems like we moved to Charlotte. But yeah, it's a great opportunity if nothing else, to recognize the folks that day to day, 365, they don't care what the weather is, they're willing to get on that bike and get to their destination. I also want to point out that you will be receiving here in the next couple of days a solicitation from staff to participate on either regional committees in which we have a seat, or the board subcommittees, which is the Finance and Budget Committee and the Performance and Engagement Committee. If you are not currently a member of one of those, we would love to have you. Finance and Budget, sometimes we've had quorum issues, although it seems to be better. I'm looking at Director Levy. It has been getting better because we do that meeting virtually now. So quorum's been a lot better. But still, if you want to know about the inner workings of DRCOG, some of the financing, and you'll be shocked how many grants that we actually receive and the work that our administration and finance folks do to make us look good every day is wonderful. So if you're interested in that, and of course the Performance and Engagement Committee, one, they do my evaluation, but also they participate in helping us, make sure the collaboration is what we hoped it would be at DRCOG, as well as, of course, they're going to be helping with us with the pair exchange, and they do some other things. The award celebration, they weigh in on as well. So please, if you're interested in any of those, we'd love to have you. So I'll just leave it there. And then the regional committees, there's like the State Transportation Advisory Committee, which meets monthly. It's a subcommittee at CDOT. Our internal Regional Transportation Committee, the Advisory Committee on Aging, which is our internal Older Adults Committee, E470, and Powerhead Colorado, the Oversight Committee. We're looking for one member on that. So just stay tuned. You'll be getting that shortly. And it's a SurveyMonkey instrument, so it should be pretty easy to fill out. All right. One more thing. Okay, so just a couple other things I want to note that are in your informational items section of your agenda. So there's first is the nominating committee's recommendation for the 2026 board officers is in your packet for review. That'll come back to you next month for action. So if you get an opportunity, please have a look at that. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to is there's a housing brief in there. And I want to give you a little bit of background on that. I've been meeting with the executive directors of CML, CCI, Metro Mayor's Caucus, Colorado Concern. I think that's it. And we just informally, we've been having conversations because we wanted to take a more proactive role in the housing space. And we really wanted to get it out in front of the next administration. We really wanted to, really be more proactive, like I said, and reaching out to candidates that are running for governor, as well as others that are running for state office, and just explain to them and encourage them to really begin to partner with us agencies and local governments. And we express to them the amount of work that's actually been done in housing. I think that was the largest disappointment for me in some of the legislative sessions. I don't think there was a true appreciation of the amount of work that's being done at the local level as it relates to housing. And yeah, Rachel Zenzinger is not one of those I was concerned with. No, she's wonderful. And so we really got together and we decided, you know what, let's just do a quick little brief that we can, just talk about each of the agencies, what we're doing, try to get a commitment out of those governors. And and most importantly, that we're open for partnership. We want to establish those partnerships before you take office. And yeah, so that's what we did. We put together, and this is a really high-level brief, and I hope you get an opportunity to read that. If you have any questions, please let me know. We're planning on distributing that sometime in early February to gubernatorial candidates and others. So I just wanted to share that with you as well. And that's it, Mr. Chairman. That's my report. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Executive Director Rex. We're going to move on to item number 8, our public comment period. Up to 45 minutes is allocated now for public comment, and each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. If there are any additional requests from the public to address the board, time will be allocated at the end of the meeting to complete public comment. I'm going to request that there be no public comment on issues for which a prior public hearing has been held before this board. Our consent and action items will begin immediately after the last speaker. Do we have anyone that signed up to be in person for public comment? And raise your hand or make yourself known if there's anybody in the room. I'm not seeing any. Do we have any online? We don't have anybody online, so thank you very much. We're going to close public comment at this time, and we're going to move on to item number 9, our consent agenda. It consists of 3 documents: summary of the January 7th special meeting, our fiscal year 2025 Transportation Improvement Program first year delays, and the 2026 policy statement on federal legislative issues. Is there a desire of any director to remove any of those items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as published.
Second.
Lynn, thank you. Thank you. And we have a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstentions? All right, the consent agenda has been approved. Our first action item is number 10. It is attachment E in your packet. Discussion of the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan update, recommended investment priorities. We're going to hear from Alvin Badal Sanchez, Program Manager, Transportation Planning and Operations. Good evening, Alvin.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, directors. I know I was just before y'all 2 weeks ago discussing this item, but we are now again here before you for seeking an action on the recommended list for the Regional Transportation Plan. I will highlight a couple key messages from that briefing 2 weeks ago, as well as get into a little bit of the decision-making that went into the recommended list that is before you in the meeting packet, as well as highlight a couple of the next steps that we have before us as staff following this meeting. Looking at the attachment in the meeting packet, I do want to confirm that any project on that list that is in red is a new project that is not currently in the Regional Transportation Plan that is being recommended for inclusion in the next plan. There are also a couple additional tables in that meeting packet. The first is completed projects. So I wanted to highlight the achievements that we've completed as a region in the last 5 years. And then there's also a final table at the back that we're calling vision projects. Those projects are not going to be included in the Regional Transportation Plan on the fiscally constrained side if the action moves forward as such, but they will continue to be shown on our web maps, on our databases as a reflection of the need that exists in the region that we're not able to capture through our fiscally constrained plan. A reminder that we received 133 candidates during our call for projects. The bulk were from our local government partners through our counties, through our county transportation forums. However, we also did receive applications from CDOT Regions 1 and 4, DRCOG, and RTD. In some cases, the applications from CDOT, DRCOG, or RTD did open up slots for our local government partners to submit additional priorities for evaluation to be included in the plan. Adding up all of those projects we received in our call for projects totaled about $11.4 billion. We cannot afford all of those projects in the next 30 years. We estimate we have about $7.8 billion available to us through the 3 regional partners out to 2050. So the next step after that call was evaluating those priorities and whittling down that $11.4 billion to even below the $7.8 billion because we had already committed to carrying forward a number of projects in the regional transportation plan. Beyond the scores that DRCOG staff did provide, we did provide 2 additional tracks to help evaluate those priorities. The first was our regional partner check-ins. So these included planning staff from DRCOG, CDOT Regions 1 and 4, and RTD. We met weekly, starting in late October and going through early December, talking through those submittals, especially those projects that were on or could impact the facilities or services by CDOT and RTD. We wanted to make sure that the visions and needs being expressed in those projects align with some of the other priorities that were coming through our regional partners. We also had 3 regional review panel meetings, and so those included a representative from each of our 10 counties in our DRCOG region, so we were able to get a representative and participation from all of our 10 counties in those conversations. We did meet 3 times. 2 of those meetings focused on the draft list as it was coming together, so they were able to see how it was shaping up, the framework staff were looking at to identify those lists for inclusion in the recommended list. And so a little sneak peek and working through that list together with our local government partners. A new piece to highlight since my briefing 2 weeks ago is our framework about how we got to that recommended list that is included in the meeting packet. I've touched on in a number of presentations, we did have projects we were carrying forward automatically. Those are projects that are currently in the Regional Transportation Plan that are either under construction or in NEPA or have funding for construction or funding for NEPA in the TIP. And so we wanted to make sure those projects automatically carried forward. We didn't want to spook anyone. Is this project going to stay in the plan? Will it remain a priority for the region? So we carried those forward automatically. Because we did that, we then did have to update a number of data points within them. So if there were any requests for changes to scope, cost, or staging period, we handled those first. Following that, in our call, we then looked at projects that were currently in the Regional Transportation Plan that were resubmitted. So from staff's perspective, if a project is in the plan and a local government applicant requested it stay in the plan, we then did provide priority to that to see if we could fit it in the Regional Transportation Plan and keep it moving forward. Following that, we looked at the qualitative scores that DRCOG staff provided to our partners to the regional panel, alongside additional information that we were able to get from our other teams at the agency. So our travel model team did provide congestion mobility scores for corridors where we were able to for those projects. We ran a new analysis using our equity index to identify particular areas in the region we might want to put some focus on for projects. And then a piece that we're calling geographic balance, but is really focused on new applicants. So there are a couple new projects in the Regional Transportation Plan recommended list for applicants we haven't historically had in the plan or haven't had as much representation in the plan. So those would be projects primarily in Clear Creek and Gilpin counties. There are not currently projects in Gilpin County in the Regional Transportation Plan. And so this recommended list does include a number of projects in both of those areas, as well as projects in Eastern Adams and Arapahoe around the Bennett area, some priorities for that local applicant that aren't currently reflected in the Regional Transportation Plan, but reflect the unique priorities and needs for that community. Where appropriate, we did combine some supportive projects. So the example I use is Alameda. We received 2 project applications for Alameda. We felt that those were more appropriate as a combined project, so that is just showing up as one project in the recommended list versus 2. That was not always the case. You'll see a number of projects for Tower Road. Talking with our local government partners, we did not believe there would be an efficiency to showing that project as one project in the plan, so that's why you're seeing that one as an example split out by each segment. Then we also included some projects in the list that we'll say are programmatic. So these are non-regionally significant projects, and that definition is rooted in our air quality status. So our plan has to have motor vehicle capacity and transit capacity projects, but where we were able to, we did include active transportation, freight, and safety projects in the plan where we didn't need to, but we're funding them programmatically. Looking at the funding breakdown for the recommended list, 1/3 of the revenue we believe to be available out to 2050 in the next Regional Transportation Plan is being captured by projects that are already in the plan that we committed to carrying forward. So these are projects that did not go through our call for projects that we said were automatically going to come into the next plan. A little over half of the revenue is going to projects that are already in the plan, that were resubmitted, that we're proposing stay in the plan for the next cycle. So only about 14% of revenue in the next regional transportation plan is going to new projects. From staff's perspective, makes sense. We spent about 2 years making the original 2050 RTP. Hopefully we got it right from this potential project breakdown. It makes sense for us. We did get those priorities right 4 or 5 years ago, so we're continuing to move them forward. Summary of that investment strategy, we do break out the projects between CDOT administered, DRCOG administered, and RTD administered. A new piece that we added last cycle that we wanted to carry forward and emphasize more were the other projects that we don't need to include in the plan, but that are a reflection of our multimodal priorities as a region. So active transportation, safety, freight, and regional transit. Each of those does have increased funding revenue for projects in those buckets. And then for CDOT and RTD, we also broke out projects versus programs. You often hear us talk about what's a line on the map, what's a row in the spreadsheet. Those are those projects. But CDOT, RTD, DRCOG are also spending a lot of money on projects we're not going to list individually in the plan. So for CDOT, as an example, that's their recent HSIP call. We expect HSIP funding in the future. We expect that funding to be spent in the region. We're not going to list every safety project out to 2050 that might occur, but we know they're going to occur. So we'll call that programmatic funding. So that's where that $7.9 billion comes into play as an example. Similar with RTD, we expect buses to run out to 2050. We're not going to list every bus route in the regional transportation plan. And so that's where that programmatic investment comes on the RTD side. The piece I haven't touched on too much are our locally funded projects. So our process has primarily been focused on what we call regionally funded projects. Those are projects that use DRCOG, CDOT, or RTD funding. We also have a whole side of the plan that we call locally funded. So these are projects that are being handled by our local governments, either through sales use taxes, bonds. You have developers completing projects. We also need to reflect those in our regional transportation plan. So we've been going on a parallel track, working individually one-on-one with our local government partners to update those projects that we already have in the plan that are locally funded, making modifications as appropriate. Does the staging period still make sense? Is this still a priority? What's the cost for this project now? We also include public highway authorities. So we do include projects from E470, Jefferson Parkway, and Northwest Parkway. Those are also identified through one-on-one conversations with each of those agencies, and depending on whether their priorities need to be included in the regional transportation plan as capacity projects. And then I touched on the final table in the attachment of what we're calling vision projects. You will also see above that there's a table called projects to be shown as locally funded. So any project on the vision side can be shown as locally funded if we have a reasonable assumption of some local funds. So an example of that is with Denver recently passing up the bond, a number of projects are just being shown in that list to show that they're moving forward, even if they're not being funded with DRCOG, CDOT, or RTD funding. We've already been before the Transportation Advisory Committee in December. Since that meeting and since that conversation, we have made a number of revisions. So I did want to highlight what those changes were based on those conversations. We did update the I-25 Central project to reflect a new name and a new staging period. We also updated the I-25 North Segment 2A project to reflect new cost and a new staging period. We swapped staging periods, so we moved a project between the years in the plan, US 85 and 104th and US 85 and 120th, at the request of staff from the City of Commerce City, after working with CDOT to confirm that that was amenable to them as well. We swapped the staging periods of the 38th Avenue and Walton Street projects at the request of staff from the City and County of Denver. Updated new costs and revenues on the RTD side of our financial plan based on their recently adopted long-range financial plan. And then split the US 36, 28th Street, and Colorado 93 Broadway project across 2 staging periods. So you'll see a smaller segment along Colorado 93 Broadway that includes business access transit lanes being implemented earlier than the larger project. That's an example of a project we have to show across staging periods for our air quality requirements. We have a recommendation before the board, but happy to take any questions. My presentation, Chair.
Thank you, Alvin. Questions? Director Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just define switching the staging periods, meaning, for example, the one on 104th and 120th, does that mean one was prioritized first and the other was prioritized second, you swapped it?
We did swap the staging periods. I wouldn't say one was prioritized higher over the other from staff perspective. So as that example, one project was in 2035 to 2039. One project was in 2040 to 2050. At the request of staff, we did switch how they looked. So the one that was in 40 to 50 is now in 35 to 39, okay. So it occurs sooner. But we checked with CDOT to make sure that that swap made sense from their perspective as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Levy.
Thanks, Alvin. You may have answered this at one of the previous presentations, but what level of analysis for air quality, conformity, and all of that have these projects gone through in order to be put on the list? And I'm asking because of all the projects as I was scrolling through them, there was actually only one that caught my eye, which was a new interchange on I-25 at Weld County Road 38. And, you know, new interchanges can sometimes stimulate additional development, which induces more traffic, et cetera. And given where County Road 38 is relative to other development, I was just wondering whether it has gone through any kind of analysis for, you know, whether it creates more congestion than it may be trying to solve.
So from our process, we haven't done any extra analysis related to air quality or GHG on the project specifically. We have been doing testing with our travel model and the latest land use forecasts to identify where we might be with our GHG emission reductions in the next plan. And so that will be something we move forward into the compliance stage after this hopeful action. But there's also a separate process that our local government partners engage in when seeking new interchanges or changes to interchanges. And so they're going through a more detailed process with Region 4 partners to identify potential impacts for that project. And it's 1601, I believe I got that number correct, that they've initiated with and are in the process of.
Other questions for Alvin? This is an action item for us. Is there a suggested motion on your?
Yes, there is.
Chair would entertain a motion. Director Flynn.
There it is. I moved to recommend that the Board of Directors adopt the active I'm looking at the wrong one.
It's on the screen.
I already moved ahead. I'm sorry. Thank you. I move that.
Nice. We have a motion. Is there a second? Director Mills. We have a motion and a second. Is that any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstentions? That motion carries. Thank you very much, Alvin. We appreciate your presentation. We're going to move on to item number 11, discussion of the active transportation plan. This is attachment F, and we're going to hear from Aaron Villeri, Planner, Transportation Planning and Operations. Good evening, Aaron.
On. Oh, there we go. All right, thank you. And thank you, Chair Baker and members of the board. I'm very delighted at long last to be here and to share with you all the active transportation plan. My name is Aaron Villeri. I'm the Senior Active Transportation Planner within the Active and Emerging Mobility team in Transportation Planning and Operations. And I am really excited to present to you the final active transportation plan for your consideration. Here we go. So this will be the only slide that I read in full, but this is the vision that was set forward in the Active Transportation Plan, and so sort of a good anchor to start with. So the Active Transportation Plan envisions a region where all people living, working, and visiting have access to safe and comfortable places to walk, bike, and roll. The plan establishes a regional active transportation network that is complete, connected, and comprehensive, and recommends actions for DRCOG and its partners to extend access to active transportation through policy, programs, guidance, and encouragement. And so this is really our North Star as we were developing and as we go forward implementing this plan. So I have gone through this before. The last time I was here was in July, but I want to give just a quick overview of the planning process for developing this plan. So really the engine that powered it, I'll say, was the Active Transportation Advisory Group, which was constituted of member governments and our key partners, who really were so generous with their time and their expertise and insights throughout the process. And so we had a number of committee meetings and really in-depth and involved review periods with folks on local agency staff. We also had really wanted to be very targeted about our public engagements through this process. So we really focused on thinking about who are the people who face barriers to using active transportation, and by targeting those folks and the barriers they face to walking, biking, and rolling, can we make a system that is more universally accessible and inclusive for all? So we really targeted our engagement activities around thinking about those key demographics and groups of people so we could unlock the system for everyone. And so the sort of core components of the plan really are the network. So we spent a lot of time on developing the active transportation network. It is a major update from the previous active transportation network in the 2019 adopted plan, and really sets forward the vision of the regional system, and also develops plan recommendations. So how are staff actually going to implement it? It's anchored by 10 core recommendations that were developed with DRCOG staff and partners, looking at what peer MPOs are doing and really putting together hopefully some very actionable steps to really advance the great work that's been happening around active transportation in the region. And then finally, developing important resource guides. These are not being put forward for adoption, but were developed as part of this planning process, and I will talk a little bit about what's in those. But this is really attempting to be responsive to just how much of a sea change there has been in this field in the last 6 years, and the change in the type of vehicles, the types of populations using those vehicles, the accessibility of different transportation options, national and state and local guidance innovations, and really new laws and regulations. So being responsible PROAG, a new MUTCD. So we really wanted to develop resource guides that supported the active transportation plan, but that can also be living documents to help DRCOG and our partners and members continue to advance our work. So the timeline for this, we initially kicked this off in, I believe our project kickoff with stakeholders was in June of 2024, and we finished it in October of 2025. So we really ran about a year and a half and had a pretty good sequence of events throughout where we were developing the network piece by piece, developing the supportive guides, and going through the production process. And so what did we make? This is we're calling this the three-legged stool of the regional active transportation network. I have previously discussed this, but our main focuses for this plan were updating our pedestrian focus areas, really with an eye on accessibility. The sort of core tenet with the pedestrian focus areas is where can we unlock walking as a mode of transportation for more people, but also people who both rely on and can benefit the most from great walking spaces. And so updating those district geographies, updating the short trip opportunity zones, which are places where we see a high concentration of trips by any mode that are 2 miles or less. Those are trips that are really competitive by active transportation modes that you can, in 2 miles, you can probably bike that as quickly as you could drive it in a lot of places. And so where's there an opportunity to create more travel options and to shift modes? And then finally, the regional corridors. We're really focused on sort of regularizing the regional corridors. So in urban areas, we wanted to focus on a pretty consistent grid spacing and slightly larger grid spacing in suburban areas, and then focusing on spines in the more rural parts of the region. And so that is the core of the plan. And how are we going to implement it? I won't read all of these, but we have 10 actions with a lot of supportive discussion about the things that we really want to do to set this plan in motion. The things that I will pin that are going to be sort of the first out of the gate is taking that vision network and developing a more comprehensive gaps analysis for the region to really understand where are the sort of missing pieces or opportunities for accessible sidewalks, where the gaps in backlog and actually building the active transportation network. Action number 4, we want to, as we go into updating the TIP policy and doing the next TIP cycle, putting together some minimum facility standards, both for compliance with new PROAG guidance that wasn't adopted as the last time that we did this plan, but also to think about sort of all the new vehicles and types of users that are using active transportation facilities. So working with this board and with our different committee partners to think about some minimum criteria for great networks and great facilities. Additionally, one of the first things that we're going to be doing is developing a count strategic plan. So doing a better job of benchmarking the amount of activity and understanding how many people are walking and biking throughout the region on a given day. Making sure we're in alignment with our Vision Zero work. And then, of course, continuing to support our bicycling and walking promotion and encouragement programs, supporting the Way to Go program, and thinking about the future of how do we encourage people to use active transportation, new normal of travel. And just to quickly go over some of the supportive guides, and these are things that we just want to make sure that you're aware of and can help us get the word out. So we developed 2 supportive guides, a sidewalk delivery guide that really focuses on accelerating delivery and completion of sidewalk networks in local jurisdictions, overcoming common barriers, both physical but also sort of in project delivery, so thinking about rising costs and labor challenges and some structural challenges for delivering these projects, and sort of new performance measures or ideas about how to evaluate performance. And the Bicycle Plus program guide, we're using Bicycle Plus as sort of a catch-all term for bikes, e-bikes, scooters, cargo bikes, one-wheels, all the sort of new vehicles that we're seeing in the region. And we wanted to document all the new guidance. There's been a new AASHTO bike guide since we started this process, a new NACTO urban bikeway design guide since we started this process, and really focusing on talking about some of those emerging modes and giving some guidance and some best practices in collaboration with our partners to really help people continue to advance that work. Just to kind of go through the public comment period, so we released a draft plan at the end of July, and the month of August, essentially of last year, was our public comment period. We did a fair amount of programming during that period and received 82 comments, so we were really excited about the level of engagement that we were able to respond to. Some of the highlights, people really just focused on enabling seamless regional travel, focusing on those interconnections between jurisdictions, and making sure that we're informing and driving funding decisions, expanding sidewalks and active corridors, really that focus on accessibility, I think, is front of mind for a lot of people, and then strengthening alignment with local plans, that this is really a supportive scaffold for local partners. So what's next? Well, we hope to roll right into supporting the next TIP policy updates, commencing the region-wide gaps analysis, and developing that active mode count strategic plan for the region. But really, we want to hit the ground running and bring this plan into the phase. So with that, I have a proposed motion, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, comments? Director Davis.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I thought it was very thorough and really appreciate all the detail and work that went into it. One of the supportive guides is the Bicycle Plus program guide. And during the public comment period, we did look at it, but then after the public comment period, and I apologize for this, is when Arvada put together some guidance on the e-bikes and the motorized bikes, because they meet certain criteria for not being able to be on sidewalks and share pedestrian pathways. And that is just because the users don't have training on these bikes and often can't stop them in time, or they're darting out into traffic. So Arvada came out with a whole guidance around these e-bikes. And so I apologize that we didn't make that known to DRCOG during the public comment period. But is there an opportunity for us to provide that to DRCOG, to the active transportation, so that it gets included or considered?
Absolutely, and that was one of the reasons that we wanted it to be a living document, because it's evolving very quickly, you know. So we would absolutely be delighted to. The City of Arvada staff have been great partners throughout the process, and you know, a lot of what we were doing was trying to get our hands around what is the local regulation of, you know, around different classes of e-bikes, and motos are becoming more of a thing that we're all kind of trying to get our hands around, and how do we communicate. So we would be delighted to have that guidance in hand and make it, you know, share it out as a resource. And
Dr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you make the network map available? Is it available in an interactive way where we could zoom in and maybe click on the corridors and see what they are?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So tomorrow, I believe they will go live on our DRCOG data tool. So we'll be working to do that by the end of the week, I hope, you know. And one of the things that will be included in the final plan is a link. It actually lives. That was a comment that we received a number of times, is, you know, a little map on a piece of interact with it. So those data sets will be available on our regional data catalog, and in an interactive web map as well. So,
Executive Director Rex.
Thank you, sir, very much. Just to follow up on that, Director Flynn. So after the meeting's over, within the next week, we send out a meeting summary. So we'll include that data tool as a hyperlink within, so you'll be able to play around.
Director Hulteen.
Thank you for this. Really exciting to see it coming forward, and I really appreciate the approach that is providing guidance to allow local jurisdictions to really meet their specific context and what they're dealing with. You know, Wheat Ridge, we're kind of at the east end, we're more like Denver, and at the west end, we're more like an outer ring suburb. So we have different contexts. So this is just really helpful guidance. I have two questions. One, to what extent was like the reporting and compliance with SB 30 incorporated into this, with the local jurisdictions reporting out their local plans? And that's one question. How was that incorporated? And then I've got a follow-up question on e-mobility.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say within the body of the plan, SB 30 kind of was late breaking, I'll say, in our process. It's something that we have been actively working on this fall, especially now that the plan is finalized. But I would say the chief thing is as we go into that gaps analysis, having that conversation with locals, having you all submit your plans and project list to us is enormously helpful to just understand not just where the backlog is, but sort of what's in the pipeline already. So it's already starting to feed into those like the efforts. Yeah, SB 30 kind of came right at the tail end of when we were finishing it, so it didn't have a real active role in driving the plan development, but it certainly set us up, I think, for success in complying that legislation.
Thank you. And then since the last plan, e-mobility really has come to the scene, or Bike Plus, or however you want to describe it. And I'm just curious how the plan treated really looking at e-bikes as vehicle displacement, and how was that looked at in terms of like the corridor prioritization or short trips? Because I feel like e-bikes actually extend that 2 mile to really like the 4 to 5. And so maybe it's a comment as much as anything, but like the rider behavior on an e-bike is a little bit different than an analog of transportation. And like, I guess I want to name that in there, but also just modeling e-bike travel behavior being sometimes more analogous to traditional like car movement through the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% agree with the comment about, what kinds of trips can it displace and what is it competitive with. We chose to keep the 2 mile threshold just because the research that we were looking, and I mean, the research is right now, but the research we were looking at suggested that kind of is still holding as like a really good, what is the average, not hale and hearty, bike in any conditions rider going to choose, and what's it going to be competitive with. So we did keep that. The one place that I would say that it really informed was thinking about facility capacity and separation. And so that was a big discussion in the Bike Plus program guide, was thinking about where do you need to widen trails if you're having class 1 and 2 e-bikes, sharing multi-use paths with people walking or running, and so thinking about where do you need, setting some criteria around where do you need to widen, where should you be separating people biking from people walking, just sort of thinking about those different characteristics, and those speed differentials, because that's kind of the big thing is the difference in speed between somebody going 20 on an e-bike or even more, versus somebody going 3 miles an hour walking. So I would say that's the biggest place that we really tried to operationalize it do we need to be planning for capacity, as hopefully more people are able to use this technology, and making sure we're getting ahead of some of the safety and conflict. Yeah.
Director Baer and then Director Spear.
Much. My question is around, and I'm going to be shocked, it's around growth numbers. And I'm curious, I'm looking at the map and seeing there's a lot of white in the north area, where Denver and Boulder have a lot more plans incorporated. I'm curious about the data that we use to look at growth in numbers. We know in Erie, when the plan started in 2024, we grew 10% that year. And then in 2025, the last I heard, and we're still waiting on the numbers, but on track to have grown similarly. And so I'm curious about what data we use to populate the plan. And then also, you mentioned that it's like a living document, and how nimble is it to be able to update as communities like Erie are growing and our new areas are coming online. We want to address connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the sort of principal way that we really thought about that we kind of got at the best answer was just through consultation with local partners. We use things like for the pedestrian focus areas, we use a lot of demographic and jobs and so census data, loads data, things like that to try to capture some of that growth and sort of where those new populations are. A lot of it was just talking to local partners and looking at their plans, getting a sense of where you all are anticipating growth in that sense. I apologize. What was the second part of the question? I lost it.
Curious how nimble the plan is to be updated. as
Thank
we,
you.
yeah, bring on new neighborhoods and want to connect areas.
Yeah, and so we're not anticipating making major updates to the network itself on like a rolling basis necessarily. I think we would want to do a larger planning process for changes to the active transportation plan itself. It's more we see the sidewalk delivery guide and the Bike Plus program guide as the more living documents. But that was also one of the reasons that I would say the network is structured the way it is, that we're able to use these sort of district-based geographies with kind of the latest and best data that we have at that time to provide a little bit more flexibility. So as different developments come online and new you can hopefully capture some of that space just by, what is the demographic data that we're using at that time. And being able to follow local plans, So we got a lot of comments. We have a TOD in this area that, is not there yet, but we know is coming. So trying to, we were able to manually adjust some of the things, those local development factors and plan documents. And really relied on local knowledge, I would say, to capture that future growth.
I think that's great. I think, Erie is not entirely unique, especially the northern area where we're growing quite a bit. And I think it's important to be able to capture, what our current needs are, which aren't the same in 2026 as they were in 2024 even. And so I hope there's the ability to be somewhat nimble, because I had a meeting with RTD this last week, and I know they're using DRCOG. So having that kind of accuracy is important for growing communities. But I really appreciate this. I'm really excited about it.
Director Rex and then Director Spear.
Thank you very much, Director Spear. Just real quick, I just wanted to add it on to that. And I appreciate your comment and where it's coming from. I mean, there's no community that's growing any quicker than Erie. There's no doubt. I mean, you guys are growing like crazy up there. I will say, as part of our regional transportation planning process, as it relates to the regional transportation plan that we update every 4 years, right? There's a commitment that we will, we'll explore and look at all the modes. So, the active transportation plan, for example, will be evaluated based in that process. So, and I think it's just, I don't know, is there an active work group for active transportation?
Yeah, we do have, we have a distribution list, certainly, that was developed out of this ATAG, and then we have our micromobility work group that is kind of a lot of the same people, and that group meets quarterly as well. So
I think the point is that we're in constant communications with your staffs, and we'll make sure that we're on top of it.
Director Spear.
Thank you. I just have a few questions. It's a little bit of a bigger topic, so I don't expect it to be addressed right in here, but let me just kind of throw it out there. It relates to some of the other directors' comments a little bit around this idea of safety, right? We are creating these incredible networks for active transportation. And we have this idea that if we build it, they will come, right? People will come and start using it. But at least in our community in Boulder, where we have built out a number of these kinds of things, we're also running into some barriers that seem to be keeping people from wanting to use them. Some of these have already been mentioned, like the e-motos, the e-scooters. We're still struggling with because a lot of people using mobility devices can't actually use our sidewalks if there's a scooter in the middle of it. And then, we also have issues coming up with extreme weather, ice, 100-mile-an-hour winds, extreme heat, cold, that sort of thing. And then also in the current federal climate, we have some people in our community who aren't feeling safe leaving their homes, let alone walking or biking or rolling around town. And I guess my question is, how do these barriers fit in, right? And whose job is it how to think about how and where we begin to address them?
I don't know that I can answer the second part, but I think we all feel some shared responsibility, certainly. And to the first question, I think that was where we really wanted a lot of the effort. Something that comes to mind as you mentioned things, weather patterns and ice and extreme heat. And we did try to capture some of that, you know, and didn't feel comfortable quite writing design standards, which is why the bike program guide is sort of a standalone guide, and it's really guidance. But we try to focus on what are some of the local maintenance practices, you know, what are some of the operational things, and trying to get some of that specificity and local guidance, because the Denver region has a really unique and in a lot of ways harsh climate. And then trying to capture some of those personal barriers and factors, you know, the kinds of engagement we did, we're really focused on, you know, people with mobility impairments, or, you know, people who are blind or low vision. We worked with our AAA to talk to a refugee group to talk, you know, to just understand some of those barriers and those lived experiences, right? There are things that are well beyond scope of transportation, but impact how people make transportation. Have to be very attentive and intentional about bringing in some of those factors. And I suppose the last thing about providing design guidance around, you know, how the right of way is designed to hopefully encourage good use of space. So, like, you bring up like scooter parking and encroachment on sidewalks, and so we tried to provide some guidance both in the sidewalk guide and in the Bike Plus guide around, you know, what are the actual characteristics of different types, the characteristics there, or a parent or caregiver pushing a stroller, and, you know, what are the barriers that they encounter, public infrastructure, and so just trying to get our hands around some of those different lived experiences. And we really hope that this guidance provides, you know, a lot of good leg to stand on for I think it's certainly up to me and to us to try to overcome those barriers.
Director Kern and then Director Flynn.
Great, thank you. I'll echo the appreciation for the work that's going into this. I think regionally, our constituents, our residents are looking forward to these things, which brings me to the question, is there an intention to have an end user, like a resident document, something that people can access to see where these are available? Where are there limitations in Arvada, for example, if I'm using an e-bike? So I'm coming from, you know, Louisville, Superior into Arvada, does that have to be a concern because now I can't be on certain trails? Or vice versa, I'd like to be able to be active, so I'm gonna take a bus, go into downtown. Where then can I go? Where are the paths? Will this be an all-encompassing so that we can all understand regionally where we can go and walk and bike and be active?
Great question. And it's a great piece of feedback. One of the things that we built into one of our action items was in the promotion and encouragement side is thinking about that sort of hyper-local route planning and things like that. So I think that's something that we do want to dip our toes in is to really think about that real specificity, because the way people make travel decisions around bike walking is just very and other modes. And so it's a great piece of feedback, and I really appreciate it. It's kind of giving me something to noodle on a little bit, but I think the plan enables that kind of discussion, and it's something I'm interested in.
I appreciate that. Your noodling is probably better than a lot of other people's like hardcore planning, so I'm looking forward. Because I mean, everything that I see, I get excited about, and that was the first thought was, how do I share it? How does everybody know, like all the people who sent me here, how do they know about this amazing work and how to use it? So appreciate it. Thanks.
Director Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Doug and Aaron, thank you. I think I would benefit, and I think the whole board would benefit from an analysis or a study of the various cities and municipalities and counties and what their plans are to expand, build out their sidewalk networks. In Denver, we have that Initiative 307, Denver Deserves Sidewalks. I've heard a lot about, but don't know about, Englewood's sidewalk program. I understand that Englewood has a program to build out their sidewalks. But if we want to look at connectivity, as Director Kern was saying, starting with the sidewalk system, walking from Denver to Lakewood or to Englewood or to Aurora, would staff have time, not immediately, but to look at all of our jurisdictions and what are your plans to pay for or expand or install an adequate sidewalk network connected?
Absolutely.
I would love to see that and understand the problem. Thank you.
Absolutely. I do like that idea, and I'll let Doug jump in just a second. I think that but I think the two things that we might start to capture that are action one, the region-wide gaps analysis. I think we really want to get our hands around just, what the backlog is, especially around sidewalks. It's one of the harder assets, I think, to track for a lot of folks. And then the other thing is action 7 is I think we are interested because question 307 is such an interesting and novel approach. And we tried to explore this to a certain extent in the sidewalk guide to just look at like some of our national and statewide peers and how they're funding sidewalk programs. But so I think we can definitely dive into that as we think about, novel and interesting to start to.
I might just add to that. It's a wonderful question. I think part of Senate Bill 30 you mentioned. Yeah. With regards to the requirement for local governments to provide the MPOs with projects plans that they have for active transportation, I think there's a real opportunity there to explore with local governments exactly what their plans are. Right, related to sidewalks and bikeways. I think, again, as Aaron said, then, we'll be able to coordinate that with the gap analysis, and there really could be something there. I mean, there's a real, the conversation we're having, I think, is great, that what Director Kern said, which I think we lose sight sometimes, right? We do these documents as part of a federal process where we forget about who the end user is. And I think to myself, and I'm a pretty avid bicyclist, and I don't know how I would get to Lakewood. Don't. And I think having that stuff, go that way. Yeah. No, but I think it's wonderful. I'm glad these are the conversations we're having, and gives us a lot of things to ponder. So I thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your presentation, Aaron. And we're going to move on to item number 12. Before anyone gets... Action. Oh, it's action, that's right.
We haven't done a motion yet.
We have to make a motion.
He was confused because I already moved it accidentally.
Yeah.
I will now move to recommend the Board of Directors adopt the active transportation plan.
We have a motion. Second. And we have a second, multiple seconds. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to item number 12. Before anyone gets really anxious, we're not going to be discussing any bills tonight.
You're welcome.
So we're going to hear from Rich Morrow, who you will get to know very well over the next 120 days. 18 days. Yep, long days. And I believe that one of our state lobbyists, Jen Castle, is here as well. So I don't know, Rich, did you want to introduce? Yeah, okay.
No. There it is. Okay. Good evening, everybody. So, yeah, the legislative session just started a week ago, so we haven't really had that much time to even look at the bills ourselves, let alone having all of you. However, I will say, and I think Jen will back me up on this, I think there's a little over 100 bills that have been introduced so far, which I think for the first week is kind of low. I would have expected maybe a couple hundred, but there's going to be at least 600 before they're done. So. But I will mention real quick just the titles. I have highlighted 6 bills that we may be bringing to you. One of them is an aging-related bill that deals with discharges from nursing homes and the process for making sure there are community services available for them. So we're going to be looking into that one and getting back to you on that. And the other ones, there's 5 of them I've seen so far that are housing-related bills, and I'm sure some of you have heard about some of these already. One of them is that home bill, House Bill 1001. That's the being able to have like nonprofits and actually transit agencies are included and so forth, be able to develop affordable housing on their properties. There's House Bill 1047, that's protections for residential tenants. So that's more of deals with evictions, the eviction process. House Bill, and these next 2 bills were just introduced today. House Bill 1065 deals with transit and housing investment zones. And it actually includes $50 million of tax credits that can be awarded each calendar year. I wonder how they're going to do that. 10 what great nerve. 1066 is, also deals with tax exemptions for low-income rental property development. We'll see. And then the last one I've got is a workforce housing and housing tax credit. So we won't go into any detail unless you got questions about that. I know sometimes I get worried about bills moving and getting acted on by the time we come back in February, but we'll just deal with it. The timing just gets kind of goofy this time of year. So with that, I just wanted to see, I think we can allow Jen 5 minutes to give a brief preview of the legislative session and see if you guys then have any other questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Am I on? Okay. Good evening. Good to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to represent DRCOG down at the Capitol. Ed sends his regards this evening. As Rich mentioned, the legislative session started last Wednesday. We are at day 8. So we have 112 more days left to go. I don't like saying that. I usually like to wait until we have 60 days. But so here we go again. To set the stage a little bit so you can kind of understand what, some of the bills that will be introduced and some of the political behavior we will see this year. We're still operating under the same Democratic majorities in both the House and the Senate. The Democrats are 1 vote shy for having a super majority in both chambers. We're going to have 6 new members of the legislature this year. And we've got a big election in 2026. We've got every statewide race that's up for election, plus several others. There's many legislators who are running for those seats. So that certainly will play into perhaps some political grandstanding, if you will, down at the Capitol. It is also Governor Polis's last year in office. He's going to try to go out with a bang. He's already proposed a couple of really big initiatives as he's, heading out the door. It's also going to be interesting to see if the legislature will push back quite a bit in his last year. We did start seeing it a couple years ago. Last year was a big year for the legislature to start pushing back. So we'll see if we see any more movement in that regard this coming legislative session. The budget is going to be the main focus of this session. Rich kind of alluded to, where are they going to get the money to fund that? The state is, for this fiscal year, still has about a $300 million deficit. For next fiscal year, 26-27, the state is looking at anywhere between an $800 million to about a $1 billion deficit. So what is the state going to do to try to fill that gap? There's going to be some big fiscal policy questions that need to be asked and maybe answered this session. There's also not a TABOR refund this year. That'll be the first time that we have not seen a TABOR refund since pre-COVID. One big issue with that is that the senior homestead exemption is funded out of the TABOR refund. So that very well could put that program into jeopardy. Tax credits will be a big one. Again, there's no TABOR refund. How are tax credits going to going to move forward. The governor has also proposed his budget based on the conversion of Pinnacle, which would give about $400 million or so to the state. So that is in jeopardy. It doesn't sound like too many folks are behind that proposal. In addition to the budget being a big driver of conversation down at the Capitol, we are going to see a lot of housing bills, a lot of which have been introduced, as Rich mentioned. Land use, local control will also be big issues. The governor is proposing a big proposal to regionalize Medicaid. He's also proposing something to restructure the Department of Higher Education and loop in workforce initiatives and talent development in that proposal as well too. So lots more to come. Big things are going to happen this legislative session, so hold on to your hats.
Executive Director Rex.
Thank you, sir, very much. And first, Jen talks about how many days are left, and she loves it. Don't let her fool you. She loves it. I just wanted to share with you all, and we've had internal conversations about this, and I know we spent a lot of time, taking positions on bills and that, particularly last year. Our commitment to you, and I hope we can stand by it, is that we're planning on being a little more judicious about the bills that we bring forward to you all this year, because we all know you have, CMLs and CCIs and folks like that are true professionals in this space, right? So we truly want to take bills to you that we feel that we have a regional interest in, and we think it's more powerful if we take positions on fewer bills and really put our effort behind those. So we'll see if we can stick to it, but that's the plan right now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. This is an action item because when we do start discussing bills, each of those bills will be an action item, but we don't have any motion to make tonight. But if there are any comments or questions for how DRCOG does this, we'd be happy to entertain those. All right, sounds good. We're going to move on. We are a little bit behind. We're going to move on to our informational briefings. The first one is item number 13, attachment H in your packet. And this is the CDOT 10-year plan update. Jacob Rieger will be introducing this.
All right, thank you, Chair Baker. Good evening again, everyone. I'll keep this brief, but we did want to bring this to you. It's very important. While we've been updating our 2050 Regional Transportation Plan, CDOT has been engaged in their own statewide planning process for their statewide plan and specifically their 10-year plan. So we're fortunate tonight to have several folks from CDOT coming to present the portion of their 10-year plan that affects our DRCOG region. Recall that we are in two CDOT regions, Region 1 and Region 4. So I'm going to start by turning it over to Darius Pakbaz, who is the Director of the Division of Transportation Development at CDOT, to give an overview, and then really pleased to have the Regional Transportation Directors for Region 1, Jessica Mickelbust, for Region 4, Heather Paddock, to talk to you specifically about the project list. As I turn it over to them, I just want to note that this has been, just like our Regional Transportation Plan, a long and involved planning process for CDOT. We've been working closely together as both agencies have been updating our plans. Really appreciate the collaboration and for them to come present to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. As Jacob mentioned, I'm Darius Pakbaz. I think most folks know me. You see me every month. But tonight we wanted to give a little bit of an update on the projects within the Denver Regional Council of Governments with the proposed 10-year plan, which was just presented to the Transportation Commission last week. We'll have some projects that we'll have a little bit of focus on, but in your packet is a list of the entire projects that are getting strategic funds and are going to be our the strategic projects within the DRCOG region. I do want to note a couple of things. One, these are our strategic projects, but are not necessarily everything that's happening. We do have asset management programs, safety programs, grants, a whole bunch of different items on here, but these are our large strategic projects that are going to be, that we're planning on bringing forward over the next 10 years. And two, you're going to see a couple of things like fix our roads, advancing transportation safety, sustainably increase transportation choice. Those are the goals that were set for the Transportation Commission for the entire state for the plan on how we categorized our projects and what projects were brought forward with the funding that was available. So with that, if I can get this to work. I broke it last time, so Melinda is, I don't know if she's going to allow me to work. Oh, she's not here with that joke. So, all right, now we're working. I'm going to skip over the introduction and go straight to the schedule. So we're kind of getting towards the end of this process. We've had, like Jacob said, a long and involved process with working with not only with our MPO partners like DRCOG, but with our rural transportation partners who we bring all of the 15 regional transportation areas in order to develop this plan. In total, we have about 250 projects that are being proposed in this new plan, and we're kind of getting towards the end of this process. So this would be a good time to see what's being proposed in the region and bring this presentation to you tonight. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Jessica Mickelbus, who's going to do a quick overview on Region 1, and Heather Paddock, who's going to do a quick overview on Region 4 and get into some of the projects.
Thank you. Good evening, board. It's nice to see many familiar faces. And for those of you that I haven't met, I'm Jessica Mickelbus, Transportation Director for CDOT Region 1. Which is mostly all of in the DRCOG area. So really excited to be here tonight. So for those of you, let me see. For those not familiar with Region 1, we do have 8 counties: Adams, Arapahoe, Broomfield, Clear Creek, Denver, Douglas, Gilpin, and Jefferson. They're almost alphabetical, but not quite. We have most of the major every interstate touches Region 1, and we have most of the major highways in Region 1. Our 10-year plan, we have 31 proposed projects. I will touch on several of those tonight. We have 5 new proposed projects we've added to the plan. We've removed 3 projects from the prior plan. We have about $275 million, the slide says $300 million project strategic funding allocations for fiscal year 27 through fiscal year 30, and then around $520 million proposed strategic funding allocations for fiscal year 31 through fiscal years 36. So as we compiled the plan that we're going to go through tonight, I do want to just take a minute to say thank you to our engineers and planners. Some of them are listening, and a big thank you to our local communities and cities who gave us a lot of input on the process as we went around and did our 4P meeting. So really appreciate all the data that we gathered as we built the plan. And with that, I'll turn the floor to Heather Paddock.
All right, good evening, board. I'm Heather Paddock. I'm the Region 4 Transportation Director. And Region 4 is in the northeast portion of the state. There's 13 counties, 4 TPRs, so DRCOG just being one of those. Some unique things about Region 4. We have the most amount of lane miles and the most amount of interstate lane miles, so our plan consists of a lot of interstate projects. Northern Colorado is also the fastest growing region in the state. You know, Region 4, I love Region 4 because it is very diverse. We've got some urban core areas, we've got some suburban areas, and we definitely have that county agricultural areas. Specifically as it relates to DRCOG, the 2 counties that are in the DRCOG area are Boulder County and a portion of Southwest Weld. In the plan, we have 53 proposed projects. A lot of those projects are fix-it-first type of projects, a lot of those rural road resurfacing projects. Those are not going to be the projects I highlight today. I'm going to be highlighting one project that's in the DRCOG area. And we added 21 new projects to the plan, and we've got a planning total for the region specifically over the next 4 years of about $210 million. So the one project that I wanted to jump into and discuss today, you know, as Darius mentioned, we are not highlighting every strategic project, and I had a number of projects that I was highlighting for the Transportation Commission, but they are outside of the DRCOG area. The one project I do want to highlight,
for you all is I-25. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background for those of you guys. I-25 has been studied for a long time. The EIS kicked off in 2001. It was completed in 2011. As we all know, transportation projects don't get funded overnight. They take a long time. But the purpose and need was really to address the growing areas of northern Colorado, but really to tackle the safety needs on the corridor, replace the aging infrastructure, and provide mode options. And I will say the EIS was probably one of the most comprehensive environmental documents I've seen. They really did expand the network and what it looked at. It was studied from Union Station all the way up to Wellington, out west to 287, and out east to US 85. So it included that whole network as it looked for that preferred alternative. So that preferred alternative included a number of things. It included express lanes, which we have out there today, and we're going to talk about some in a moment. It talked about general purpose lanes, talked about commuter bus on 85, express bus on I-25, and it also included that commuter rail, which is now referred to as front range passenger rail. The other thing I just want to remind everybody and just talk about is that, I think sometimes we lose, I know how we use the interstates. A lot of times it's for us to connect our cities and our communities, but interstates are what they are. They are connecting states. And they are to provide that fast, efficient network for national defense, commerce, economic growth, and obviously our connectivities to work, recreation, family, all of the above. So what we're going to talk about today, I just want to orientate you guys. This is a long corridor, Union Station to Wellington, a long drive. We could not tackle all of those projects at once, so we broke them up in segments. So you're going to hear us talk about specific segments. There is a little map to the side. Recently, we just completed segments 6, 7, and 8. That's basically from Berthoud to the north end of Fort Collins. It was a 20-mile stretch of express lanes that were added. Currently under construction is segment 5. It's a 6-mile stretch. That is really the last 2-lane stretch of the I-25 corridor. Meade is taking the big brunt of that construction at the moment. But we're making some good progress. I'm going to talk about segment 4, which is from State Highway 66 to State Highway 7, and then Jessica's going to talk about some proposed projects on segment 2 and segment 3. There is a segment 1 that is from US 36 to Union Station, and that is that barrier separated express lane project. All right, this is you.
Yeah. A little bit of trade-off tonight, so we'll try to get to the project in a minute. We do want to talk a little bit about Bustang service and knowing that the express lanes are one of the things that kind of help make that service reliable with reliable service from 30 minutes between Union Station up to Firestone and Longmont, and want to know that as we take a look at these projects, we want to make sure that we continue to provide that service and fund that service going into the future. So we also have in the plan the $6 million annually for Bustang fleet maintenance and vehicle replacement. We'll continue to looking at funding that service as we go through, and that having those express lanes and the mobility hubs that come with it is what helps provide that additional option for sustainably increasing transportation choice. And for those that aren't familiar with Bustang, it is the interregional bus service of connecting different regions of the state that is run by CDOT. One of the successful ones with a lot of daily trips, 245% increase in service since 2015. We've had a lot of investment in transit-oriented build-outs near some of the mobility hubs that have been built in the northern part of the state, and had a huge recovery on our fare box rate, some of the best in the nation as well. Speaking of mobility hubs, this is kind of take a look at the build out of the mobility hubs, some of which are listed on the plan, but as part of that segment 7, I got that right. Yeah. 7-8, thank you. We had the Berthoud, Centera, Loveland, and Firestone Longmont Mobility Hub, and we have some future mobility hubs, and not just on I-25, but in other areas of the I-25 corridor and the I-70 corridor as well. And so try to integrate that as time to have a fully complete transportation system as part of these projects. So do wanted to quickly mention that before we get into that. So with that, Jessica is going to talk about some of these projects.
All right, thank you for the orientation on I-25. Hopefully that was helpful. We're going to start out by talking about I-25, segment 2A, which goes from, oh my goodness. Sorry, okay, there we go. I'll hold my papers here. Which goes from US 36 to 104th Avenue, project that many of you in the room are very familiar with. This project has been on the 10-year plan since 2020, and it has been identified as a priority for the stakeholders, as mentioned, since the early 2000s. This project is currently undergoing an environmental assessment. So as we discuss the project, we are looking at alternatives, but we have honed in on a proposed alternative that is similar to the thought process as originally included in the 10-year plan. This is a major safety project. You'll see the project in the category for the 10-year plan is advancing transportation safety. Safety project for both northbound and southbound I-25. Many of you are familiar with closures on I-25. I think we had one today coming southbound. On December 28th, I-25 was closed twice in the same day for several hours, once in the AM northbound and then again southbound in the PM. Crashes on the corridor occur almost daily, and the alternatives that we have come up with reduce crashes by about 46%, which is sizable. It's very hard with transportation projects to achieve a reduction of that level. So as it stands right now, the proposed alternative includes additional right lane to provide freight trucks ample space to excel and decel and merge safely from I-76 to 104th Avenue. Adequate shoulders for emergency responders and breakdown vehicles to do the activities and tasks that they need to do. It does include a northbound auxiliary lane from I-270 to 84th Avenue and alleviates bottlenecks from US 36 to I-76 on-ramps and the I-270 on-ramp through 84th Avenue. So really excited about this project and the safety benefits that it brings. All right, the next segment we're going to talk about is segment 2B. And that goes from 104th Avenue to 120th Avenue. So you'll notice on several of these that the strategic funding listed is 0 because we rely heavily on CTIO, which is a part of CDOT, and they run the tolling system for CDOT. So they have financial opportunities that CDOT doesn't have, and so we strongly rely on them for the majority of the I-25 corridor for completion. Segment 2B is new to the 10-year plan, but not new as a priority for the local communities. It currently has substandard shoulders that need to be improved for safety and operational efficiency, as well as safe access for enforcement and first responders. This project is in conceptual design, so we have included kind of what we think we might be doing in our cost line item holding. But things that could occur would be improvements of shoulders, general purpose auxiliary lanes, and a new pedestrian overpass to replace the one that's deteriorating at 104th by Cinzetti's. And so as the project moves through design, the alternatives and solutions will definitely be further refined. All right, I-25 segment 3B, exciting segment, and we've listed this one as sustainably increasing transportation choice, and that is for the benefits that it really brings to the transit network, both east and west and north and south. I-25 segment 3B is new to the plan. It is in the out years, the 31 plus years, but again, not new as a priority for the local communities. I-25 segment 3A is complete from 120th to E470. So 3B extends from E470 to Colorado 7, and this 3B does include the full build out of the interchange at Colorado 7 and I-25, which really allows, yes, I hear some excitement in the room, which really allows for that connectivity from Brighton to Boulder, from Fort Collins down south to Union Station. So we've got BRT and transit planned both east and west and north and south. So this really becomes that modal hub that we've been waiting for. This portion of I-25 has FIR level design completed for the express lane and the interchange build out. So again, our cost is really predicated kind of on today's dollars into the next, maybe with a 5-year inflation rate. But the estimated cost also includes some of the cemetery right-of-way we would like to acquire before it's utilized, and then the major utility transmission line relocation. And now I'm gonna hot potato it back to Heather to talk about segment 4. So segment 4, there's about 16 miles remaining that does not have a continuous express lane on the I-25 corridor. And I think it's pretty crucial to Bustang and to the operations of the corridor to complete that express lane. Some of our traffic models have shown that with the completion of that express lane in peak hours, it could save a traveler as much as 30 minutes compared to the single occupancy vehicle. And just as a reminder, express lanes are a proven TDM strategy. They have high performance, guaranteed trip reliability. They're attractive for transit. This is like, you know, I-25 BRT. It encourages the carpooling, 3+ are free. It does reduce emissions. CTIO has had to basically track and measure the emission reductions. And in segment 2, they have measured that in peak hours. They are seeing 8% reduction in greenhouse gases. And the other large benefit, in my opinion, these projects would not get completed, as Jessica mentioned, that opportunity to reinvest those funds that are put into the corridor through that toll revenue. 5, 6, 7, and 8 has already leveraged $500 million in loan capacity from CTIO. And the intent is to leverage close to another $500 million, slightly less than that, to complete segments 2, 3, 2A, 2B, 3, and 4. And then one other thing to tag here is that we have been tracking our traffic, our crashes and our incidents on the completed segments for the last about 18 months to 2 years that it has been opened. And we have seen a 45% reduction in crashes since, measured to pre-construction. And so, as Jessica noted, they are projecting a 46% reduction in crashes. Our 45% crash reduction observed is pretty spot on. And the other thing to note is the mobility hubs that were opened up has really increased that ridership on the North Line. And we do part of this project at 119. Right now, it's sort of an interim hub, but the tunnel is built underneath I-25 and will make those center loading connections as part of this project. All right, you're going to be stuck with me for a few projects in a row now. So we're going to leave the more complicated I-25 corridor, and we're going to go to the I-270 corridor again. Many of you in this room are familiar with the I-270 corridor. So this is was in the original 10-year plan as one line item. So one of the things that we've done really for transparency and for budgetary tracking in the new 10-year plan is that we've broken I-270 out into several line items. So you will note in your packet that we have a bridge line item, critical bridge line item, and the project broken out into phases. So the project is currently undergoing an EIS. We recently concluded public hearings just last week. Thank you for those of you that attended, and the public comment period did close yesterday. As proposed, the preferred alternative is the replacement of the corridor's most structurally and operationally deficient bridges, and addressing key structural deficiencies and supporting future phases by advancing mainline segments to the selected preferred alternative footprint. Bridges included in the critical bridges phase 1 package are the eastbound and westbound I-270 bridges over South Platte River, Burlington Ditch, Brighton Boulevard, UPRR and BNSF, and East 60th Avenue, BNSF. These are very structurally deficient bridges. Our maintainers are out there on a regular basis with closures of 270 for emergency repairs. So both not safe for travelers and not safe for our maintainers. The mainline roadway that will be constructed to full width within the phase includes 2 segments between the South Platte River bridges and the Burlington Ditch bridges, and between the Brighton Boulevard bridges and 60th Avenue bridges. Phase 2 of the corridor is the full replacement of the remaining bad bridges and the roadway infrastructure along I-270 not completed in Phase 1. So this does include construction of Vasquez Boulevard interchange, intelligent transportation system infrastructure, the express lane, and the I-76 ramp improvements. And then Phase 3 in the plan is completion of the non-mainline scope elements, roadway reconstruction, some improvements to Sand Creek Drive, Vasquez over Sand Creek, a pedestrian overpass at Leiden Park, and some other elements. The other item I want to note that we did break out into the plan as part of I-270 is the full reconstruction along Highway 224, which is seen kind of as more of a redundancy corridor to I-270 for those who don't want to drive on the interstate. And it was originally a resurfacing project. We talked with our local stakeholders and invested some of the $270 into the 224 corridor to do lighting and sidewalks and really robust pedestrian crossings. So you will see a transformation of that corridor, hoping to go to add for that project in April of this year. All right, so kind of an exciting project. They're all exciting, but this North Stadium access improvements. So this is an adjusted line item. It was mentioned earlier by DRCOG that they did rename the line item. So it's not really new to the 10-year plan, but we moved the funding up to years 27 and 30. So it was previously called the I-25 Central Non-Capacity Safety and Operation Improvements. And as many of you know, the Broncos are building a new stadium at a place called Burnham Yard. That is kind of the map shown here, stadium site on the screen. So as part of the infrastructure improvements for the stadium, the 10-year plan now does have the $30 million that was originally I-25 operational and safety improvements renamed to support safe stadium infrastructure. So while many of the roadways parallel to the new stadium are under the jurisdiction of the city and county of Denver, such as 6th Avenue and 8th Avenue, Colfax belongs to CDOT, so we do have an opportunity to do some infrastructure improvements there. The exact improvements and potential NEPA requirements have yet to be determined as they're still looking at the stadium area plan. They're working with the local communities on what that would look like. So once the traffic and mobility studies are completed, we will be able to kind of further refine where that $30 million will be spent on CDOT jurisdictional roadways. But we are at a max of a $30 million contribution from the 10-year plan. So if I have the opportunity to stand here, of course, I'm going to say, go Broncos, beat the Patriots. All right, so not too far away from the last line item, the I-25 interchange reconstruction at 23rd and Spear Boulevard. These two bridges are the lowest in the state of Colorado on the interstate corridors, and so this is problematic, obviously, as trucks are getting larger. We're really looking at the safety along that corridor. So this project has been in the 10-year plan since 2020. It's currently going through the NEPA process with alternatives analysis complete for the interchange configurations. The project will improve safety for vehicles traveling along I-25 by raising the vertical clearance of both the 23rd Avenue and Spear Boulevard bridges over I-25. This will reduce the occurrence of bridge strikes and associated traffic safety and operations impacts. Currently, the bridges are low on the outer edges, so trucks are merging in very quickly so that they don't strike them, causing weaving and merging challenges. We will also improve safety for vulnerable road users along Spear and 23rd Avenue by removing free-flow ramps, lowering the speeds of vehicles at ramp terminals, and improving sight lines between vehicles and vulnerable road users. So the graphic on the screen here, it's actually AI generated, but it's kind of what we're hoping we can accomplish. This is the 23rd Bridge that is a very common east-west access point into and out of the city and county of Denver. So adding the sidewalks, adding a protected bike lane, it's already a designated bike corridor, so really giving that protection that those users deserve. And one of our other projects, region-wide signal and ramp meter upgrades, classified as Fix Our Roads. So currently, our ramp meter technology is quite antiquated. It's about from the 1980s, and they've actually told us they won't support our technology anymore. So we have taken aim and initiative to modernize this aging infrastructure of the ramp meters by upgrading the critical components such as the communication technologies and the detection equipment. So what do ramp meters do, if you're wondering? They reduce congestion, minimize delays, and enhance overall safety for motorists. So replacing these and having them functional is very critical for the interstate congestion flow management. All right, and final two projects. In the current 10-year plan, we do have the Federal Boulevard. Actually, we have a BRT line item in the current 10-year plan. The future 10-year plan breaks that current single-line BRT into two BRT corridors, again, for transparency and for accountability for expenditures and progress on the projects. So the first BRT that's been broken out is the Federal Boulevard Bus and Rapid Transit. We currently have RTD service on this route. It runs about 60 minutes per Route 30, and the 31 runs about every 10 minutes. The bus will operate in dedicated lanes with the new BRT for about 13 miles of the corridor, and then 5 miles of the corridor will be in mixed traffic. So our hope is that the bus will come about every 7.5 minutes, which really gives you that efficient bus and rapid transit service. We will have level boarding stations and all of the kind of accoutrements that qualify for BRT. We have submitted for a small start funding grant from the Federal Transit Administration, and we have scored very well. We've scored a medium-high rating, so we're really hopeful that we will be able to secure funding for the bus and rapid transit project. And then lastly, the Colorado Boulevard Bus and Rapid Transit Project. It's a little bit further behind in design than the Federal Boulevard BRT, but it is going through alternatives analysis right now under the FTA guidelines. So again, Colorado wasn't called out specifically in the original 10-year plan, but the new plan does break it out. It is included in the out years, so 31 plus. And as I mentioned, it's currently undergoing FTA alternatives analysis. We do hope to have a public engagement meeting at the end of February, so please keep an eye out if you're interested in attending that. RTD currently does provide bus service on Colorado Boulevard. That's Route 40. It operates about 7 days a week, about 15-minute headways Monday through Friday, and 30 minutes on Saturday and Sunday. So our BRT system would be looking to improve those headways for people looking to ride the bus. Right, and with that, I'll turn it back to Darius.
Just want to check how are we doing with time, Mr. Chair, if you need us to. Okay. All right, I'll do this quickly because I know we're getting a little bit late. Just with our 10-year plan looking at a statewide, all of these next slides is looking at a statewide objective. We really wanted to emphasize the engagement with our local partners in order to develop this, not only with DRCOG, but with all of our other MPO partners and throughout the region, being able to take a look at how we're able to meet those three goals that you kind of that you saw on there, whether it's fixing our roads, paving, whether it's, excuse me, paving projects, fixing bridges, fixing other assets, as Jessica mentioned, or some of those other areas, and continue the collaboration that we have tried to work with in the first 10-year plan. When we take a look at trying to fix our poor assets, it's more than half of our projects is going to be in the statewide total is going to be working on pavement and bridge assets throughout the state. So that's going to increase our surface treatment budget by about 65%. And then I think Jessica kind of alluded at this a little bit, but apologies. The 5 CDOT affiliated enterprises, they provided $1 billion in support of the 10-year plan in the last plan. They're going to be investing in the transportation system $5.2 billion. So we expect that once the plan is out there, that they'll be able to provide support for the projects in the plan in the future as well. This may be a future item of discussion, but all the MPOs in CDOT are required to provide a GHG transportation report, which shows the reduction in transportation emissions from their regional transportation plans. And we'll like to note that based off the reports that have been submitted and approved by the Transportation Commission, we're already achieving those goals that are outlined in Table 1. And one MPO has not submitted their report yet because they haven't gotten to the point yet. So we're already ahead of what's been done based off of DRCOG, North Front Range, Pikes Peak, Grand Valley's plans, and CDOT's and this plan as well. We do have the dashboards to take a look at progress. If you're interested, happy to go through this in a little bit more detail, talk about pavement bridge condition and some of our metrics on how we're able to take a look on the progress we're making with our metrics. And then finally, if you wanted to know what's going on with the 10-year plan, we have dashboards which provide more information than the single-page sheet in your packet. Construction start and end dates. We provide a quarterly version on our website, usually around, it's every quarter, about February, May, August, and November period, with the November being the annual report that we include our budget submission. We do have an accomplishments report that we put out in February. And then a lot of our major projects have their own websites for updates on construction conditions, public meetings, and other information. And then finally, our roadmap for adoption, we believe we will have this open for public comment probably next week. We're trying to aim for Monday, and of course, we will let DRCOG staff know. We'll notify DRCOG staff, and they can pass that along if you want to provide public comment. It will be through our website and on the full list of all 248 projects that are proposed in the plan. And then we'll be taking a look at after concluding of the public comment period and any final updates to the plan, bringing the final proposed plan over to the Commission for adoption. And that sets the framework for it, because we still have, of course, not only we talked about the TIP earlier, we do have a STIP, statewide version of taking all those TIPs together, and that kind of sets the framework for the near-term funding of that. So went through those last slides fast, but I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
Okay, Director Flynn, then Director Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jessica, could I, just two quick questions on the federal BRT, which goes through my council district. Is it still planned to have the buses at Dartmouth, Federal and Dartmouth, continue east on Dartmouth to the Englewood Light Rail Station?
I think that's the current anticipation.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see it on there, so it made me nervous. And then if and when the Broncos move to Burnham Yard and the Mile High Stadium site opens, we've heard a lot from our planning department about reconstructing the Federal Colfax interchange to an at-grade intersection. Is that part of the 10-year plan, or is that?
No, that's currently not part of the 10-year plan, but we do have a study ongoing right now for Federal and Colfax and alternatives analysis that just kicked off, I think, recently. So.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Director Hanson.
Thank you. Yes, I want to say thank you for the presentation, and thanks to CDOT for how much, this is a lot of work, and Adams County has been really involved in advocating for District 1. But anyway, I know it's getting late, so I will cut to my question. Regarding busting, because this was actually kind of a surprise to me, that the statement that, or the bullet point, any new projects involving I-25 in the next plan will be predicated on fully funding busting, mainline services, et cetera. What does that mean for for segment 2A and segments 2A specifically, because that's coming up soon, and then, fingers crossed, and then 2B?
I want to make sure. Okay, we got it on. So we are still committed to making sure that those are going to be on the plan, but we also want to make sure that we're committed to busting. We believe those work in concert together, so we want to make sure that we find ways to continue the service that busting has already provided. So when we have those put together, we want to make sure that we have those two things identified. Now, these are capital construction programs, and busting. We do have a busting line item already in the 10-year plan for capital replacement and capital maintenance, but we'd be wanting to make sure that we are able to take a look into future years of funding the service on it as well, to make sure that that is included as a part of that.
So thank you. So just to clarify, that does not, this bullet point is not something new that is going to somehow jeopardize the work that we've all done collectively to get these projects on, moved up into their position on the list, because that is a concern. When I read that, honestly, that really makes the little hairs on my neck stand up.
No, that shouldn't be one thing that jeopardizes things on the project. It's mainly looking at making sure that we have the ability to provide alternatives and making sure that we have the things in concert and being able to take a look at the long-term future of all the alternatives.
All right, I'm going to hold you to that. Thank you.
Director Baer and then Director Martinez.
Thank you so much. I kind of had the same question about the busting predicated clause, had some concerns of how that's presented. It's been so great to see the crash data from segments 6, 7, and 8 and how that's reduced by 40%. We desperately want to see that in Region 4 and 3B and 2. And so anything that might jeopardize those improvements in that safety for our community feels a little, it also makes, I think we have synchronized hairs on our necks probably. Anyway, so I did want to just raise the concern for that, just that that's a major priority for our communities along I-25, those safety improvements. So, and also the best thing, as you mentioned, that's like one of the most successful revenue per mile segments, and so it's also a priority to maintain the funding for that. But it would be frustrating if it came at the cost of safety improvements along that course. That's all. Thanks. I'm sorry I didn't work a question into that.
No problem. I appreciate the input.
We did ask for comments as well. Director Martinez.
Yes, I would like to say that I agree and share the same concerns that Director Henson and Director Baer just shared with us. The way that I interpret this predication of the busting services being fully funded before I-25 projects get underway is that, it tacks on a large amount of funds and are required to be spent before we can even begin to start working on the safety improvements. And so, to me, that sends the wrong message of prioritization over, lowering the priority of safety in our region. But if this is the way forward, I guess I have questions about what fully funding the busting service actually looks like. So, for example, what would the projected ridership in a fully funded scenario be, and to what extent would this busting built-out system look like as far as additional stations or routes or stuff like that? Can you describe that in a little bit more detail for me?
Okay, there we go. So I think we want to make sure that we're able to continue to have that funding at the current levels. If you remember, I don't remember the exact Senate bill, but there was a certain amount of funds that went to funding busting service that was able to provide the continued service along North I-25, along I-70, and various other routes throughout the state. And so we want to continue to work with the different options in order to continue that kind of service that we have. Now, as far as actual ridership goes, that's something I can't answer at this time. As you saw on the slide, our current ridership on the system is about 350,000, if I remember the slide. And so we want to continue to provide the current level of service that we're able to provide today.
Okay, I just have one additional follow-up to that, and that is about this predicated funding. Does that include funding the mobility hubs that we've seen in this presentation? And if so, would that also include completing the interim mobility hub at I-25 and Highway 7?
No, but making sure this is on. No, and a lot of those mobility hubs are separate line items on the 10-year plan as well.
Director Ward and then Director Dukes.
Thank you, Chair. I have a quick question about the I-25 segment 2A. Sorry. I know there was recently a open house town hall a couple weeks or months ago, and there was a proposal to eliminate the current RTD station, well, it's Fort and Park and Ride at 88. And I was wondering if that is still in the plan.
for the question. So we're not eliminating a stop. Those two parking lots will still exist, and we're working very closely with RTD to determine how the circulation of the buses could change based on their ridership. And I believe they're beginning their, I think it's a transit connectivity analysis. Bill, I'm probably getting the acronym wrong, but they're beginning their system optimization plan. Is that better? And so
it's comprehensive operations analysis.
Thank you, the COA. So as they're working on their COA, we're working with them kind of in tandem to make sure that this project is accommodating changes they would make.
So let me rephrase the question then. The proposal is to eliminate the slip ramps that are on I-25 right now. Obviously, you're keeping the existing parking lots, so that way the local buses, like the route, I think it's the 88, can continue to still service there, but routes like the 120X longer be able to service that stop. Is that understanding correct?
The 120X would change how it services that stop. It would not be able to pull onto a slip ramp off of I-25. That is one of the safety challenges that we currently have, is that weaving and kind of that turbulation that causes with the buses going over to pick up pedestrians and riders and then back into the left express lane. So
yes. So when I used to be on NATA, the North Area Transportation, originally the plan was to do kind of a mobility hub essentially in the middle of the highway, and that's no longer.
Correct.
Okay, that'll be interesting to see what concepts you all come up with to service that stop, as well as ensuring that the buses remain in the HOV lane. Moving on to segment 2B, has there been any discussion amongst CDOT staff about implementing an infrastructure project to increase transit accessibility to the Wagon Road station, and that currently only northbound HOV lane buses can access the park and ride from the HOV lanes, but southbound you have to go loop around onto 120th and then come on and fight your way over. So curious if that kind of increasing access for southbound, but also continuing on for northbound and coming in from south. That way busing may potentially be that. And then if there's extensions to the 120X, for example, north to the Highway 7 Mobility Hub.
Yeah, so we're in conceptual level design on 2B, so those types of comments, this is great timing. We can carry those forward and talk with the team on how to incorporate and consider those.
Okay, great. And then my next question goes to the I-270 corridor improvements. As it relates to the HOV lanes that are proposed, has CDOT determined exactly where those HOV lanes are going to start and end on 270?
So the prior I-70 environmental impact statement had connections that we're doing a separate NEPA document for on the east side so that you would be able to connect to the I-70 express lane onto I-270. And then those would terminate currently at right before I-25. So we do have a line item in the plan for studying how to make that connectivity system go all the way from Boulder with an express lane all the way out 270 to I-70, north, south, to do that kind of full connectivity.
Okay. Are those...
We have two directors waiting. Director Ward,
are those two studies going to be as part of this project, or are they going to be out projects after the fact?
The I-70 Express Direct Connect should be done almost in parallel with the I-270 project. The other one will be in the out years.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll note that their contact information was in the last slide. So, but Director Dukes and Director Mills, and then we're going to move on at that point. Yes.
I'm on now. Okay, thank you. I just want to express, when we're looking at Region 1 projects and the 270 corridor, just to express, I'll be remiss not to say thanks for the community outreach, the thoughtfulness, and I know there's a lot of details on this one slide, but representing the community and understanding the consistent conversation and outreach, and just to say thanks for that. this is game changer. We're excited about it for the city. We're excited about this opportunity as a gateway into Commerce City, and so we look forward to this project.
Thank you.
Dr. Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you all three of you for this presentation. I know it's late. I won't comment on everything, even though I want to, because it's really late. But my question is on Highway 224 that's associated with the 270 project as well that you mentioned. When do you expect to actually kick off construction on that? Because when I inquired about that roadway several months ago, I was told that sometime during 26 is when the resurfacing would be done. And now that there's some changes, does that delay that start? Because that is a very poor condition road.
Agree entirely. I'm really pushing the team to hold. So if we go to add this spring, we're hoping that maybe we could get some shovels in the ground in early fall on some of the kind of non-weather critical elements and items. And then the full construction of that project would occur in construction season fiscal year 26.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then really quick comment on the segment 2A part of I-25. That picture that says crash ahead is very meaningful and is very accurate daily. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darius, Heather, and Jessica. We appreciate your presentation. We are running a little late, but this is important. Item number 14. We heard earlier from the RTD accountability that they're talking about reducing the number of board members. Well, DRCOG has a different idea. This is potential metropolitan planning organization, geographic expansion, and geographical. Okay. Expansion. Jacob, please introduce this. And I know that we have Director Rebecca Lloyd, Commissioner from Clear Creek County, and Jody Hartman Ball, Commissioner, is also listening in online. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Baker.
She's here in person, sorry.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. So yes, this is important. I say this with love. The chair did not sort of give me the greatest setup. We are not going to expand the board. That's not what this is about. But I do want to clarify what it could be about. So first, just a little bit of background on this. We are required under federal law to review our metropolitan planning area boundary, and I will show you that in a couple slides, after each decennial census. And under federal law, we're really kind of looking at those urbanized areas. We have the Denver-Aurora large urbanized area that covers a lot of our metro region, and then we have smaller kind of urbanized areas also within our region. And we're looking at, has the census expanded those geographic boundaries? And along with those urbanized areas, are there other sort of considerations around planning coordination, economic development, mobility, traffic flow? You know, we've got a little bit of sort of discretion here, but really we're looking at our boundary to see once every 10 years, does our boundary still make sense? Do we need to make adjustments to it? Has the region changed that we need to kind of reflect that in an updated boundary? So because of all of that work and that federal prompt and requirement, we have started some conversations with Clear Creek County and their municipalities and Gilpin County and their municipalities about the potential to expand our boundary to include them geographically, and I will show you that. A little bit more context, Clear Creek County and Gilpin County are already part of DRCOG's state-defined transportation planning region. I'll show you that as well. They are, of course, DRCOG members. Some of them are here tonight, as the chair alluded to. They're part of our Area Agency on Aging already. They're part of our Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. You know, they're members of DRCOG. So in some ways, this is not a change in that sense. It's again, more just sort of geography in a sense related to our MPO planning function. I talked about large and small urbanized areas. The Evergreen small urbanized area has been expanded. It does extend a little bit into Clear Creek County under federal law. That frankly would be a directive. We do need to kind of, you know, address that and sort of resolve that in our boundary. So that's one sort of, you know, push a little bit. And as we all know, of course, there are strong existing links already between sort of the urbanized area of the Denver metro region and Clear Creek and Gilpin counties. You know, I-70, all of the recreational opportunities, all the traffic flows, the workers, you know, there's already strong ties, right? So altogether, you know, not here to sort of sell you on this, here to inform you, but we're looking at this as a potential sort of low cost, but potentially high return strategy, really to strengthen regional planning. That's what this is about, regional planning coordination and streamlined transportation planning in particular. So fun with maps. This map shows the DRCOG region, which is in green and red, I guess. That's red, orangish red. So all of that together is DRCOG and our DRCOG boundary. The area in the reddish area is our Metropolitan Planning Organization area, or known under federal law as our Metropolitan Planning Area boundary. The areas in green are the rest of DRCOG that are currently not within the MPO. So that primarily includes, obviously, Clear Creek and Gilpin County that we're discussing tonight. It also includes the very rural areas of Adams and Arapahoe, far east, east of Kiowa Creek. Those rural areas are, again, part of DRCOG, but not part of the MPO planning area. And then if you're wondering, who knows what the square in the upper northwest part of Boulder County is?
Board.
Yes, Rocky Mountain National Park is also not part of our MPO planning area for obvious reasons. We don't do moose planning here. All right, another way of showing this, again, more fun with maps. This is just a different way to kind of show the same thing. The outer boundary is our DRCOG boundary. The orange boundary here is our MPO boundary. What's cool about this map is it also shows our Area Agency on Aging, just to visually make the point that I made earlier. Clear Creek and Gilpin counties are already part of our AAA, so we already have that existing tie with them as part of our DRCOG work. Finally, in the previous presentation, our friends at CDOT mentioned transportation planning regions, of which there are 15 in this great state. There are 10 rural TPRs, and there are 5 urban TPRs, which represent the 5 metropolitan planning organizations in Colorado. We are technically the greater Denver TPR in the center. So this is our state kind of defined boundary for working with CDOT and transportation planning purposes. And as shown, Clear Creek and Gilpin County are already part of our TPR. So some current activities and potential next steps here. As mentioned, we've had some ongoing meetings with folks up in Clear Creek and Gilpin counties. Appreciate their hospitality, appreciate the collaboration. We're just exploring to see if this would be a good fit on both sides. If we get a little bit farther, we might start having a conversation about securing resolutions and support letters. There is documentation that would need to be put together. This is a process defined under federal law about how we expand our boundary, which we have not done since 2007, by the way. We don't do this very, very frequently. We're also scheduling meetings with our planning partners, with CDOT, to talk this through, and together with CDOT and RTD, which is required under federal law, what's known as our 3C planning partners, to have a coordinated collaborative conversation about potential boundary expansion. If we carry this further, you would ultimately take an action. You would vote on changing the metropolitan planning area boundary. We would do that anyway, but that is also a specific federal requirement to do that. And then ultimately, if we get that far, if you take an action, if you approve it, there are some steps we go through with CDOT and the governor's office. We ultimately write a letter to the governor through CDOT. The governor actually takes the action. The governor's office takes the action directly and then notifies our federal planning partners, Federal Highway and Federal Transit Administrations. So again, just wanted to present this to you, just wanted to be transparent that we're having these conversations, that we're exploring this potential opportunity. Welcome any thoughts and questions, and I will turn it back to the chair. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I will also mention that we have Commissioner Susan Bruman here as well. So thank you for attending. Appreciate that. Questions, comments? All right, I see Director Harmon.
I just want to say that I don't believe it draws DRCOG's bandwidth down at all. We have enjoyed tremendous help. I can speak for Idaho Springs for years. I'm just thinking about the cooperation that we have between Gilpin County and Clear Creek County. We get along quite well. We cooperate with economic development. And I'm just saying that the level of expertise and help that we have had from DRCOG, and particularly Dr. Flo's there on a pretty regular basis, a very heartfelt thank you. And I want to thank my fellow directors for the consideration and let you know we would be deeply honored to officially be brought in as part of the MPO. Thank you.
Director Zenzinger.
So I, too, would like to lend my support to this. Jefferson County partners quite a bit with Gilpin and Clear Creek County, in particular on transportation. In fact, just today I was in a meeting with the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee where we are forming a transportation committee because we are in the same judicial district, Gilpin and Jefferson County. So any time you need to go through the court system, you have to get from Gilpin to Jefferson. And we have noticed that there have been some complications with that with regard to transportation and getting people so that they can effectuate justice. So we partner in a lot of services as well. In fact, we just entered into a new agreement, Clear Creek, Gilpin, and Jefferson County for our early childhood counsel provider. And so we know that we have services that we share between the three counties, and transportation is a key to that, making sure that our service providers are able to serve all three counties well is contingent on collaboration. So I would like to lend my support to this.
Thank you very much. Director Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Jacob, and fellow directors of DRCOG. I'm Clear Creek County Commissioner Rebecca Lloyd, and I'm joined today by my DRCOG alternate director, Jody Hartman-Ball. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about our county becoming a full member of DRCOG by joining the MPO. Clear Creek is home to a critical segment of Interstate 70 from our eastern border in West Evergreen to the Continental Divide at the Eisenhower Johnson Memorial Tunnel. This road functions not only as a regional facility, allowing us all to go skiing, but also as national infrastructure. I-70, of course, supports interstate commerce, tourism, emergency evacuation, as well as statewide economic activity. While the benefits of the county are broadly shared, the impacts are not. Clear Creek County experiences some of the highest traffic volumes and visitor-to-resident ratio in the state. On peak days, our true population of over 50,000 travelers, visitors, and locals bears little resemblance to our county's population, census population of 9,200. Yet, our local governments are responsible for emergency response, law enforcement, road maintenance, and the community impacts generated in each year by millions of travelers passing through. Our crash rate data illustrates the imbalance clearly. Clear Creek County has the highest crash rates in CDOT Region 1. For example, we average over 5 times higher crash rates per capita than Jefferson County. These incidents drive elevated emergency call volumes across the county and place sustained strain on our local services, which are funded primarily by the small permanent residents. This traffic volume and impact creates a structural imbalance. Our county communities absorb the operational, fiscal, and safety impacts of a national corridor, while the funding and decision-making frameworks largely sit outside the county. Additionally, as national and regional investments continue to improve capacity and reliability along I-70, these projects invariably increase demand on local services. Without intentional mitigation, road improvements anywhere along the corridor can translate into a greater strain on small mountain communities, such as Clear Creek and Gilpin, that do not have the tax base or staffing capacity of metropolitan jurisdictions. Today, Clear Creek, this keeps going on and off, I'm so sorry. Clear Creek is not asking to slow progress. We are asking for recognition and inclusion. We believe that counties that host nationally significant infrastructure should have a seat at the table in regional transportation planning discussions that directly affect them, access to mitigation resources that scale with the impacts they experience, and recognition that mitigation, particularly in safety, emergency response, and systems resilience, is a legitimate transportation investment. From an MPO perspective, this is not just a rural issue. Both the reliability and safety of I-70 directly affect the Denver metropolitan region. When bad traffic incidents occur in Clear Creek County, these impacts ripple across the entire transportation system. Finally, as the MPO continues to set priorities and allocate resources, we respectfully ask that disproportionate impacts from national infrastructure be explicitly acknowledged, and that host communities like Clear Creek County and Gilpin County be meaningfully included both in planning and funding solutions. We can achieve this by being included in the MPO, and we hope DRCOG will support us in that effort. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. We're going to go on to our informational items. I'll just draw your attention to 15, 16, and 17. Do you have any comments on any of those? No, sir. And now we'll go to committee reports. I'm going to ask that these be brief, reflect decisions made, and information germane to the business of DRCOG. If new directors can look at their agenda and see the reports that we normally get, we are not going to get all of these tonight, but we will get some of them. STAC, Director Ward.
Thank you, Chair. STAC met on January 8th. CDOT provided an update on its 10-year plan, focusing on projects in regions 3 and 5, which are the northwest and southwest/south central parts of Colorado. STAC voted to support a letter to the Joint Budget Committee supporting MMOF, the Multimodal Transportation and Mitigation Options Program funding. CDOT staff also provided updates related to MMOF and revitalizing Main Street funding. CDOT staff provided an update on the agency's live camera program, and they also presented an update on the truck chain station feasibility study, which is required by Senate Bill 24-100. And that's my report.
Thank you very much. We'll next hear from Metro Mayors, Director Conklin.
Right, very briefly, Metro Mayors Caucus is having our retreat on Saturday. We've invited the gubernatorial candidates that are known, and several of them will be joining us, and we're looking forward to that conversation with them about the relationship between municipalities and the state. That's going to be pretty good, and they are representing both sides of the aisle. And the next Metro Mayors full caucus meeting is February 4th. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Mac, Doug Rex.
Thank you very much. The Metro Area County Commissioners had their regular meeting on January 16th. So just so you all know, as of November, Douglas County Commissioner Abe Layden is the chair of MAC for this year. And at the January 16th meeting, they talked about their 2026 priorities, regional emergency preparedness, construction defects and cold weather coordination. Construction defects is one that may be removed.
We're mixing it.
Yet to be determined on that one, so stay tuned. Also had a conversation about state and federal impacts to counties. State and federal law impacts to counties as of January 1st. And then Boulder County Commissioner Stolzman, she gave a presentation on the USDA SNAP pilot program. And the commissioners had a very robust conversation about it afterwards. So there you go. That's my report. Thank you, sir.
E470, and we're going to hear from Director Diet.
Thank you. The only thing of note, we had some elections, board elections. We have 2-year cycles, so Francois Bergen from Aurora will still be chair. Myself will be vice chair. We added our chair, Commissioner Baker, as secretary, and Commerce City Mayor Steve Douglas as treasurer. That is all.
Thank you. CDOT, Director Pakbaz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll keep it brief. You kind of already saw what some of the stuff we've been working on. Other than that, it's been a very light winter season, so a lot of our maintenance force has been catching up on roadway maintenance while we have the opportunity, but I think that has changed over the past weekend, probably into next weekend. Other than that, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. RTD, Director Saroy.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would say, first thing I'll say is that RTD does continue to bolster our service for special and major events. So if you are lucky enough to be going to the Broncos game this weekend, consider taking RTD. And associated with that, for the longer term, we are developing a major events plan, which will look at how we serve major events in the future and, depending on budget, looking at bolstering services to major events. And next, I'll talk about the COA, which was mentioned. We are in the process of selecting a consultant, and we will be starting that process probably late spring, early summer. So expect for a very major stakeholder engagement process for that. And then lastly, earlier this month, our board did elect a new chair, and that is Patrick O'Keefe, who is from District H, which represents Littleton, Highlands Ranch, parts of Centennial, and I think Cherry Hills Village.
Thank you very much. I will point out our next meeting is February 18th. Other matters by members.
Chairman, if I may, real quick, just because I know we got some freshman members here. Just so if you parked in the garage, please see Melinda over here. She has some stickers for you to basically validation to get out of the garage. So the other point of that is follow everybody out this door. If you parked in the garage, don't go out this door because you can't get back in the building. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. And this meeting's atypical. We don't normally go 3 hours. I wanted y'all to know. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Yeah.